As of sworn in, Judge, you may be seated.
Thank you.
Everybody have a seat.
Mrs. Norkler, this is your 4-year-old.
Yes.
And it is your claim that your 4-year-old was bitten by that dog, neighbor's dog, while in the care of the defendant's 9-year-old son.
That's correct.
And you want the defendant to pay you $5,000 for the dog bite, as well as the emotional distress arising from the dog bite. Is that right?
Yes.
The defendant says that your 4-year-old provoked the dog, and she's counterclaiming because she says that you have caused her child some measure of emotional distress, and she's also counterclaiming in the amount of $5,000. So since I assume you weren't present, is that right, when your son was bitten by this dog?
Not at the time of the bite, no.
Who, other than your 4-year-old, witnessed it?
My witness and my daughter and some other people who aren't here today.
Okay, I'll hear from your witness. Would you step up, please? Tell me your name.
Yvette Orozco Contreras.
Are you a neighbor?
Yes, I'm their neighbor.
When did this incident occur?
On the 11th of March,
At what time of the day?
I'd say about 4 o'clock in the afternoon.
And were you outside when this happened?
Yeah, I was in my driveway.
Tell me what you saw.
Well, I saw the kids playing outside. Michael was outside with his dog.
Okay, this is Michael. Michael was outside where with his dog?
In the street in front of my house.
In front of your house? Okay.
And he was just playing around with the dog. And then after a while, he just, I guess, was scaring the kids with the dog.
How was he scaring the kids with the dog?
He was telling the dog to say, sick 'em or get 'em.
Okay. And how many children were around him?
At that time, I'd say about 7.
Was this little boy one of those children?
Yes.
What is his name?
Houston.
So Houston was there too. Was Houston riding his bike, or was
Houston was riding his scooter,
And where was he riding his scooter?
also in front of my house.
In the street or on the sidewalk?
On the street, we live in a cul-de-sac, so all the kids play right up on the cul-de-sac.
So it was in the street, where the cars are.
Yes.
Okay. Who was supervising Houston?
I was out there watching them, and other parents across the street were watching their kids too.
And what about Mrs. Norkler? Was she outside watching her son?
No.
At the time the bite happened, I wasn't out there. However,
not
I
out
was
there.
looking in on them. And my husband was home also.
But neither of you were out
We weren't
there?
actually outside, no.
Okay. Then what did you see?
Well, after a while, I saw Michael let go of the dog.
Michael let go of the dog. How did he do that?
He just let go of the leash, and the dog jumped on Houston.
Did you see him actually being bitten by the dog?
I saw the dog do something. I wasn't so close to see the dog bite him, but I did see him do something.
And then what did the dog do?
I didn't pay attention to what the dog did. Houston ran towards me, and I looked at his leg and took him to his parents.
When you saw Michael outside with the dog and you saw him saying, you know, sick him, did you say anything to him at that point?
I really didn't say anything because he was outside for quite a while with his dog, and the dog didn't seem to be dangerous until he started saying those words.
Well, once he started to say those words, did you go over to him and say to him, stop saying that?
No, I didn't.
Well, didn't you think it was a dangerous situation?
I did, but since the dog didn't seem harmful to me, I didn't make a big deal about it.
Okay. How close were the children to the dog when you saw them outside?
They were right next to him.
And did the dog seem friendly? Were they petting the dog?
They were all riding their scooters, their skates, all that, and the dog was just in the midst of them.
Okay. Let's say you're this young man with his dog. How close were the other children?
I'd say to about the end of this table.
So just 2 or 3 feet.
Yeah.
Did this young man tell the children to get away from them if they were riding around on their scooters?
No.
He didn't?
He was playing with them, too.
How was he playing with them?
He was just running around with his dog, too.
So they were all sort of playing together?
Yeah.
Was he the oldest child out there?
No.
Were these two the youngest children out there?
Yes.
How old are your children?
I have a 6-year-old son that was outside playing.
And were you outside at all times watching him?
Yes.
Now, Mr. Norkler, when your neighbor brought your son in, did you examine his leg? I think she said it was his leg.
Yes.
Okay, what did you see?
I saw that it was bleeding, that there was a scratch. My son was crying.
But I want you to tell me about this scratch. You have, is that a
The bite.
photograph
Yes,
of
we
it?
have a
Yes.
photograph.
I'd
we
like to
took
see it, please.
Shortly after you came in. And Your Honor,
Yes.
I know you can't see very well from that picture, and we had cleaned up what blood there was, but as of now, a month later, he does have a scar on his ankle from that.
Well, I'd like to see that. Houston, could you come up here for a second, please? As a matter of fact, come right up here, Houston.
He also had a scratch to his elbow from where the dog jumped on him.
What happened to your foot?
He just scratched me.
The dog scratched you?
Yeah.
Did it hurt?
Yeah.
Could you sit up there for a second? Because, you know, my eyes aren't so good anymore. Can you show me your leg? Where the dog scratched you? Oh, I see. Just a little tiny scratch. Doesn't look like scratch as bad as what happened to your eye. What happened to your eye, Houston?
I just fell on this. Well, we fell on the sidewalk.
Is that what happened to your eye over here?
Yeah.
When was that?
The biggest one happened the day after Houston was attacked by that dog. The little one happened like a month before it happened in front of the property she's renting.
Okay, Houston, why don't you go and sit down? Miss Norkla, how did the large injury happen to your son's face?
He was riding a scooter that he's ridden a lot of times, and the side of the scooter, the padding had come off of the scooter, and that was what went into his face and caused that injury.
Where was he when this happened?
He was right in front of our home.
Where were you?
I was at work.
I was home with Houston that day.
Were you home inside the house when it happened?
We had just got home and we...
Just answer my
No,
question.
I wasn't.
Where were you?
In the garage, heading into the house.
So you were not outside with your son when he was riding his scooter?
No.
One would think that you folks would have learned a little bit, not to leave a 4-year-old outside unsupervised. So he has 2 injuries in the course of one day. One seems much more severe than the other.
Your Honor, may I say something?
Yes.
Part of the reason why sometimes I'm not outside, sometimes they're not outside is because we know each other very well. And
Were you outside when the injury occurred to his eye?
No, I wasn't.
So you weren't outside supervising, is that right?
No, but I'm saying on the day that the dog
I'm
bit.
not talking about the dog. I'm talking about the next day, where the serious injury happened. Not about the day where he got a little scratch on his leg. The day where he got a very, very bad injury. How many stitches did he have there?
8.
Didn't have any stitches on his leg, did he?
No, he did not.
Real cases, real people. Judge Judy. Robert and Kimberly Knockler say their son, 4-year-old Houston, was attacked by their next-door neighbor's dog.
Okay. Did you take him to the emergency room to take a look at that scratch on his leg?
No, we didn't.
So that you were not concerned that the dog required a tetanus shot or anything else?
We knew that he had already had his tetanus shot and he was up to date because of the injury that happened to his eye in front of their property like a month before.
So you're telling me that there was another injury that your son had while he was outside?
He's had a total of 2 injuries that were accidents and 1 injury that was intentional.
What was intentional?
The dog bite.
Dog bite was not intentional. I don't even know if it was a bite. I can't tell if it was a bite or a scratch.
The dog
You
was
can't-
quarantined.
Just listen to me. You can't tell whether that was a scratch. It looks like a scratch. It looks like a healed scratch. There are no tooth marks in there, nor do I see any in this photograph. So I don't know whether the dog scratched him or bit him. It seems to me if you believe that your dog is bitten, the first thing that you do is you take the child to an emergency room, and the emergency room makes an evaluation as to whether or not the child was bitten or scratched. There is, in fact, a difference. This is not a $5,000 injury, folks.
It's intentional. He told that dog to sick my son. And she has admitted to that.
Listen to me. That's not what she said. She said he was saying to the dog, sick him. There were a whole bunch of children around there. He is also an unsupervised, how old are you?
9.
9-year-old. Just like your son was an unsupervised 4-year-old. I mean, I read it in the paper. The defendant says that her son was, in fact, supervised. She says most of the time this time was different. It's always the times that are different that create a problem.
Not. He's unsupervised a lot. He has harassed a lot of kids.
Let me
in that
explain something to
neighborhood.
you. I'm looking at his face. He doesn't have the scars on his face that your son has from being outside, unsupervised, and injured twice on his face. I mean, this was an unfortunate incident. He did the wrong thing. There's no question he did the wrong thing. But what I gather here is there has become a vendetta because of that, and that is outrageous. You claim she says bad things about you. You claim that she says bad things about you, and you say that there's an intentional act on her part because her 9-year-old, who was outside playing with a bunch of kids, did a really stupid thing, and your son got scratched.
No, ma'am.
Yeah.
Judge Sheindlin, I would state that it was an intentional act on his part when he was saying sick him, sick him. She has admitted to that. I don't believe that she wanted this to happen,
So
but
then why
I
you-
believe that
He's
definitely-
9 years old. Your son is 4.
Yes.
Right. You think he's
My
an adult?
baby.
What? That's hers. That's hers.
And I don't have a problem with that.
So then
but
why
she
would you
left
sue her?
him-
Let me ask you a question. So then why would you sue her, your neighbor, over a scratch for $5,000? Why would you do that?
My son came to the door. He was crying. He was bleeding. He told him, sick him. She
I
admits
already
to
heard that. It's not what I'm
That's
asking you.
Because of the intentional nature because of the fact that it is very upsetting that somebody would tell a dog to sick a child.
You're absolutely right. If an adult did it and the dog did it, you put him in jail. 9-year-old does it, they're not so smart.
She knows that he has a habit of harassing other children in the neighborhood.
Well, madam, if you know that that's true, then when your witness saw him outside with the dog and was standing outside supervising all these children, she should have said something like, I suggest you bring Houston and your daughter inside because he's outside with that dog and not doing the right thing. She wasn't concerned. She just told me they all seem to be playing. Isn't that right?
They did all seem to be playing, but he was taking advantage of that.
Then why
Houston
didn't
was
you
scared of
stop
the
him?
dog.
Then why didn't you do anything? What kind of
He doesn't
supervision is
listen.
that?
He does not listen. He's attempted to take
Then
my
you
daughter
bring-
to the pool where she cannot swim.
Then you bring your children inside and you speak to the mother later.
The mother does not listen either. She knows her
Listen.
kid does this.
I'm going to get to the counterclaim for a second because you ain't hearing me. Now, you have a counterclaim that I believe is a little bit of a nonsense, but I'm going to give you an opportunity to tell me about it. Go ahead.
Okay. Michael has not, first of all, played outside since the incident, only in our backyard. And on Sunday, we were getting ready to leave. He said, can I go out front? The kids are out there. I said, sure, just for a few minutes. I'm on my way out. Michael walked out front. Kimberly was in her driveway. There was a bunch of kids out front, and Kimberly told my son, watch it, kids. Here comes the trashy kid. My son came in the house very upset. I walked back out with him. I said, let's go. We need to go. And I said, Kimberly, I don't understand why you would call a child a name, being a teacher. And then I said, I don't have time to get into it right now. My contractor's waiting for me. I have to go. And she said, wait, let's get into it right now. And she went off. She went off yelling, saying, I'm neglecting my kid, called me a... And she just kept going off. And I said, this isn't any way a teacher should act. You're supposed to set an example for our kids. If you want to talk. We don't yell and scream. She said, I better get into my car before she beats me. And I left.
Nasty neighboring. If it's true, it's nasty neighboring. It's not worth $5,000, and neither is the dog Scratch.
Right. I do have some stuff I'd like to submit to the court, please.
Go ahead.
One regarding the police report, which is actually contradicting what Yvette's testimony is and what she told the police.
She's being dishonest. That is a reinvention of history. I did not state those things to her. I did not call her child a name. That did not happen at all.
What did you say?
All I told my children to be careful.
Really?
I didn't say trashy.
Just a second.
And she called the cops to my home, what, 5 or 6 hours later?
Can I read this, please?
Please.
Quiet.
Yes, I'm sorry.
Here. Well, let me tell you what the police said, Ms. Contreras, that you told them, and these quoted in the police report. I asked her if she heard Michael sick the dog on Houston, and she said no, he didn't intend for this to happen. I asked her what she meant, and she said Michael did not intend for this to happen. He was just playing around. I asked her if she was positive that this was an unintended event, and she said she was positive. Did you tell that to the police?
I did. What I meant is that I don't think Michael did it on purpose. I don't think he really...
Well, she says it's intentional, so that you don't agree with her.
I think that
No, just
he
a
was
second.
trying to scare...
So that you don't agree with her that it was an intentional act.
Well, from the looks of it, it looked like he was just trying to scare them, and unfortunately the dog did something
Well,
to
you
him.
told the police that he was just playing around.
Well, yeah, he was playing around.
Okay.
And he,
Playing around and a scratch don't add up to anything.
Your Honor, our dog Trixie plays tag with the kids frequently, when he is playing outside, which means when Michael runs with him, he jumps up and tags them, he licks them. He was playing tag with the other kids that day as well.
Whatever.
And
if you have,
just
listen to me.
Okay.
If you have a 9-year-old and a dog, and you acknowledge to me in your answer, madam, that your son is told not to take the dog outside if you're not home. Is that right?
That is right.
So he disobeyed you.
Yes, he did.
And I assume that he was punished for disobeying you.
He was consequenced.
Whatever that means. I don't know what that means. Does that mean like a timeout?
No, that means he's been unable to play outside unsupervised at all.
But that's what happens. You know, I don't think that this was an intentional act, and certainly if the child had been bitten and injured, the result here would have been different. Put your paper down. The result here would have been very different. I see no evidence that the child was bitten. I see evidence that the child had a scratch as a result of this unfortunate horseplay, which was really your fault. Do you understand that? You understand that? Okay. If you hadn't disobeyed your mother and either stayed in the house or left the dog in the house, all of this wouldn't have happened, right? So you have to learn that you have to do the right thing, not the wrong thing. As far as your counterclaim is what?
Okay.
What? So far, you're not losing. What are you complaining about?
Well, I have more evidence on the counterclaim. She's slandered us to CPS. She's slandered us to the police department.
Let me see the CPS report.
This is actually the report from our therapist, and this is the CPS worker. She said
Did you
that
call
the
Child
report.
Protective Services about her?
It's in my answer. The date that this happened, they came to the door, my neighbor and the other person, and they said Houston was outside and that Michael had the dog bite Houston. I walked outside and I said to Michael immediately, Michael, go get your sister. She's not home. Michael, go get your mom. She's not home. Michael, are you alone? Yes. I called the police.
Why did you call the police? I don't
believe-
understand why you called the police. Your son had a scratch on his leg. Period.
The reason I called
Wait
the
until your
police-
neighbor gets home and discuss it with her.
I don't know when my neighbor's gonna be home.
Oh, madam, your case is dismissed. Listen to me. Totally, completely dismissed. I mean, I think your conduct that day as a neighbor was outrageous. And I would be more concerned about you two people supervising this child, because this child looks as if he's been through a war zone in your custody, all over his face, when he's been totally unsupervised by you. Maybe you just rely on Mrs. Contreras to supervise your children when they're outside. But he's 4 years old. And 4-year-old has had an accident on one day and a terrible accident on the next day, and a month before an accident outside, and you're nowhere to be found. So I would be more concerned about you supervising your own child. Your
We
son
do
was
supervise our
scratched by the
children.
defendant's dog. It was an unfortunate circumstance that did not require you picking up the phone as a neighbor and calling the police. It required you waiting, cooling down a little bit, and when she came home, perhaps go over to her house, give her a buzz and say, listen, something bad happened today. I want to tell you about it because my son got a scratch on his leg when your dog jumped up on him. Your son was not doing the right thing. Nobody was supervising him. And I want to tell you, if it happens again, I'm going to contact the authorities. If you wanted to do that, I would have no objection. But to call the police, you're outrageous. But I'm not giving any money. That's all.
On the matter of Nelson versus Perry. Parties have been sworn in, Judge. You may be seated. Ladies, have seats, please.
Mr. and Mrs. Nelson, the defendant is your former son-in-law.
Yes.
Married to your daughter. Is this
Yes,
your daughter? They were divorced and they have children.
Yes,
How many
ma'am.
children do they have?
4.
Your lawsuit claims that, pursuant to the judgment of divorce, your son-in-law was court-ordered to pay 60% of, among other things, child care costs for
Yes,
the
ma'am.
children so that your daughter could work.
Yes, ma'am.
And that it was decided that you would be the child care providers for the children,
Yes, ma'am.
and that your son-in-law owes you for child care. Your daughter works off her 40% of the child care by working in your family business.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Son-in-law says the choice of child care provider was unilaterally taken away from him. And I'll get to his defense in a moment. When were you divorced, sir?
Last year, November 7th.
And at that time, was your wife employed?
Yes.
And who was watching the children at that time?
The hours were set up to where I watched them when she was at work and she watched them when I was at work.
That's not true, Your Honor.
Just a minute. And if there were ever any problems with babysitting, who babysat for the children?
Her parents or my mother.
Why don't you step up here for a moment?
Okay.
How old are your children?
I have a 3-year-old, twins that are 8, and a 9-year-old.
When did you make arrangements with your parents to babysit for your children?
While we were married, there was a lapse in between our shifts, and my parents would come out for an hour and a half until I got home. And then when he moved out, I needed them to come at 11:30 p.m. and watch them all night long until I got home at 9 o'clock in the morning.
When they came for that hour and a half, prior to the two of you separating, were they paid any money?
No, they used their gas and everything to come out there for nothing.
I just asked you. They weren't paid any money.
sorry.
They came out to take care of their grandchildren.
Right, they did.
And then, when you were working at night, they would come to your house to sleep?
Right.
And you didn't ask for any money from your daughter, did you?
That was when we started being actually paid cash for the babysitting.
Who paid you cash?
Well, the logic of the divorce was Bill was to pay part of it and my daughter was to pay part of it.
Was that discussed with Bill?
It was court-ordered, ma'am.
No, it was not court ordered that you were to be the babysitter. That's not what I asked you.
No, it was
I
not.
asked you, were you paid any money?
No.
And when was it that you began to be compensated?
When the divorce was final.
In November.
In November, and we had to take over watching the kids on a 40-hour basis.
When for the first time was it discussed with your former son-in-law that you were going to be babysitting for your grandchildren and expect payment?
I have never discussed that with my son-in-law as far as a cash payment, ma'am. When we were first babysitting for them when they were still married, the agreement was he would keep our vehicles in running order for our business because that was his line of work in exchange for us babysitting the children.
You mean you had actually an arrangement as far as that was concerned?
Yes, ma'am.
As grandparents?
Yeah.
You had a business arrangement, a
Yes.
barter arrangement. You would barter, he took care of the cars at the times that you filled in for babysitting?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And what was your daughter doing for you in exchange for babysitting for your
She
children?
works at our donut shop.
What?
We have a donut shop. Sometimes she comes in and she'll fry, sometimes she'll ice. Other times, if our vehicle isn't running, we use her vehicle to deliver with.
Who had a conversation with him with regard to your taking over full-time babysitting responsibilities starting in January of 2001? You did.
Yes, actually, Your Honor, my parents didn't start watching the kids again until the end of May.
May
got
of
a
what
room,
year?
This last year.
And what conversation did you have with your former husband about your parents taking over that responsibility?
At the time, he wanted me to let his girlfriend watch the kids. I didn't feel comfortable with that, and I found a friend that would watch it for $440 a month total, and he wasn't comfortable with that. That left me with no other choice but to go back with my parents. And I discussed it with my parents. They told me to tell him that if he would come over and keep the maintenance up on their vehicles, that would be the deal. He said no way. He refused. He got upset.
Well, you got somebody who was not related to you to take over the babysitting responsibilities, you know, during the overlap time for $440 a month. And your parents want how much? $1,000?
$880.
$880. Where did you come up with that figure?
Well, because we would have to drive to Star and watch the kids there. We would have to bring the youngest one back to our house so that we could continue taking care of the things we had to do. Then we would have to go back to Star to pick the kids up after school. And then we would have to go back to our place so that Tammy could come over and pick them up. And we would take the kids to all their doctor's appointments or anything they had to do at
They're
school.
grandparents. That's what grandparents do. What was wrong with his fiancée?
Well, I have a letter that she gave me telling me my kids weren't wanted. I have him on tape telling me that he doesn't want to see his kids. And I went to pick him up one time when he had them for the weekend, and they were all in the house. Him and her were in the bedroom taking a nap, and my 2-year-old was 3 houses down by himself, heading towards a busy street. And I just didn't feel comfortable with her having them on
That's
a regular
good reason.
basis.
If that happened, that's a very good reason. You're absolutely right.
Real cases, real people. Judge Judy. Linda and Floyd Nelson say their daughter's ex-husband, Bill Perry, owes for his share of daycare costs. Bill says Linda and Floyd are the babysitters, and he doesn't approve.
Now, what was wrong, Mr. Perry, with this friend that she got to watch the children for $440 a month?
I do not know these people, Your Honor.
You may not know them. Did you say to her, I'd like to meet them? I'd like to meet this friend, spend some time with this friend before I agree?
No,
Did you
I did
say
not.
that?
No, I did not.
Why not?
At the time, I had my fiancée, which was willing to watch them.
That's not a good idea. So, Mr. Perry, while I am sympathetic with your position that your in-laws have overcharged the amount, I do think that you were being short-sighted and got a bug in your bonnet when you said, forget this stranger, because your former wife, who's the mother of these 4 children, I am certain would not want to leave the children with anyone who was not capable of babysitting for them. And just because you say, well, I have somebody who's going to do it for a lot less, my girlfriend.
Your Honor, Your Honor?
I'm waiting.
I never claimed to not want to pay the person she has talked about. If I would have received a bill in the mail, I would have sent my money to them. I said I had somebody else that could babysit my
girlfriend.
Correct.
Listen to me, Mr. Perry. Put your hand down. Listen to me, Mr. Perry. If you said to your former wife, I'm married, I am in a solid relationship, we've been married for a year or 2, she stays home, she likes the children, they like her, this is going to be a forever thing as far as I'm concerned, let's try to save as much money as we can, my wife will take care of them. I assume that your marriage to your former wife was your first one, is that right?
Correct.
It didn't work out 4 children later.
Correct.
Now you have a girlfriend. There is even more of a likelihood that this isn't going to work out with your girlfriend forever. I think she is perfectly justified in saying, I don't want his girlfriend to babysit for my children. Put your hand down. By the same token, Mr. and Mrs. Nelson, I think it's overreaching. I think you're overreaching a little bit. I think that what you're doing is saying to your daughter, listen, come and put a little frosting on the cake every once in a while. You work off your 40%. We want to be good people. You know, we want to be good grandparents. But you really don't charge your daughter for her 40% of this child care bill. But if you had somebody to babysit for your children for $440 a month, he would be responsible for 60% of that. Okay. It's about $264 a month that he would be responsible for. That's pretty reasonable, isn't it, sir?
Yes, it is.
Good. That's what he's going to pay you for babysitting.
That's fine.
Good. May, June, July, August, September, October, November, and December. It's 8 months. $2,112. So from now on, Mr. Perry, if you don't want to get into any difficulty, it seems to me that you make those payments on time. She says, fine. Not they. I'm not interested in the plaintiffs. Your wife said that would be fine.
Right.
Right?
Right.
And she's the only one who is a party to the court order ordering you to pay 60% of the daycare. Do you understand?
Yes, sir.
So right now you owe them $2,112, and I suggest that you keep that money up every month as long as they take care of the children. That's all.
Parties are excused. You may step out.
He didn't want to have anything else to do with her, nothing to do with the children.
If they would have sent me a bill on daily or a month basis, I probably would have paid.
He's seen him 4 times in 6 months. I can't help it.
One of the children is not his biological child, and he has to pay child support and daycare on that child.
He hated her. He didn't want to see the kids.
Didn't go like I thought it would, that's for darn sure.
And now the next case.
All parties in a matter of Schmidt versus Meads. Step forward, please.
27-year-old financial advisor Ray Schmidt is suing his former friend, 28-year-old waitress Christy Meads, for an unpaid loan of $1,000. Christy says they were much more than friends, and the money was a gift.
Mr. Schmidt, you claim a loan to the defendant in the amount of $1,000. The defendant acknowledges that you gave her $1,000. She said it was just that. It was a gift from a friend. So tell me when you gave her the $1,000, what it was for, and how you know her.
I originally met Miss Mavis in early part of June. I was introduced through a direct selling company, and our relationship kind of grew from there. We did become friends. We saw one another at different functions, and the way it happened is she and I became friends. And
just social friends, not romantic friends.
No, just social friends. And
that's not true.
Just a minute.
Through the course of our relationship, she promoted my business, and she got me a few clients. I actually have a copy of the account apps for these clients that she helped get me.
Did you pay her for her service?
No, ma'am.
You never went out socially, is that right?
That's not true. We did go out socially, a group of us. After meetings, we would go to have cocktails after meetings.
How many people in this group?
Usually anywhere from 6 to 10.
So it was a large group. So you weren't intimate social friends? You never went out to dinner alone together?
Yes, we had.
Oh, you did that too?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. How many times did you go out for dinner, just the two of you?
Never dinner, a few lunches.
But never dinner?
Never dinner.
Never dinner. That's fine.
Okay. So that, would there be any reason why she would perform a business function for you that was financially remunerative for you without billing you?
Yes, because we were friends.
So now let's get to the $1,000 and the why.
She wanted to open up a direct sales office in Las Vegas. And when she went to go do this, she was a little bit short on cash. So I offered, let me loan you the $1,000.
Who brought up the amount?
I asked her, how much do you think you'd need?
Okay.
So it was agreed that she would pay me $500 2 weeks, because we got paid on a 2-week basis through this company, and then the other $500 the next 2 weeks after that.
And she went and she didn't pay you back the money?
No.
And that's why you're here. You have anything else to tell me?
I did, because she brought me these clients, I did, in fact, purchase a dress for her. It just so happened that...
That's the dress, I assume. I didn't know what that show and tell was. Go ahead.
So here's a receipt for that.
How much
it
did
would
you
happen,
pay for the dress?
It was $64.86.
Okay, now let's hear your version of the events, madam.
Yeah.
Can you do me a favor? Put the schmata over there. Go ahead.
Okay. I did meet him through a mutual friend that brought him into our office. That's true. And yes, I did help him get clients because he was a very nice young man when I met him. He did try to pursue me in a romantic way, and he had a girlfriend at the time. So for quite some time, I wasn't taken by it. However, he told me that he broke up with her, which later I found out from her calling me that they never broke up. But I did bring in one of the loving cards he gave me as just a business friend, and I don't know if you'd like to read that.
I'd like to see it.
It's definitely not just a friendship card.
Ray, remember this
Got it.
card? Shh.
Yes, ma'am, I do.
Okie dokie. It's hard to find a love like this, a sharing love, an honest love, a love that's so rare, so beautiful. This is a business friend.
She helped me through a tough time. She had some books and some insight, and that was able to help me take my life to another level.
So you owed her a lot.
Yes.
Now, I read the card. Keep it going.
Yeah. So basically, when I was thinking about moving to Las Vegas, he offered to lend me this money. At first, I was like, no, no, no. And then he told me he believed in me, so he was going to give me this money. I came back to Newport Beach, and one of his friends told me that he was back together with Lana. Now, I'd pretty much talked to him every single day, probably a couple times a day. It was, we had grown a relationship. I basically got very upset about it. I was out with him and one of his other ex-girlfriends, who I was actually helping him with for the business. Yeah, he stays friends with a lot of those. And she was one who told me that him and Lana were back together, and I was like, So basically, I just decided at that point I just wanted nothing to do with him anymore. And then I got a phone call from Lana who told me that they never broke up.
Let's go back a little bit. When you first started to speak, you said he offered to lend me this money. He offered to lend me this money. Now, I think that at that point, when you said that, you realized that you misspoke.
No, I turned him down.
What did you say to him?
I was a very proud person. I didn't want to take his money.
Is that what you said?
Yeah.
You said, I'm too proud, I don't want to take your money.
Yeah, I've never taken money from anybody.
And then what happened?
He said he wanted to give me $1,000.
Yes.
That was when he told me, I believe in you. And I told him, okay.
So what you're telling me is you're basically a very proud person. You've never taken money from anybody, but you were willing to take this as a gift, but not a loan.
Because I really liked him.
Miss Meaves, Mr. Schmidt may not be a very nice person. He may have deceived you. He may have deceived the old girlfriend. He may like to string along a lot of ladies at one time, but he loaned you this money. You know he loaned you this money. I now know he loaned you this money, and that the reason you decided not to pay him back this money was because you felt as if he was deceptive and didn't deserve to get it back. Because if I believe anything that you say, you want me to believe everything that you say. So if you tell me that you are a proud person and you never take money from anybody, then that kind of person would have said, I will accept a loan from you that I will pay back, but I'm not accepting a gift from you because that would mean that I was not a proud person.
Right.
And doesn't take anything from anybody. So I don't believe you. Anyway, judgment for the plaintiff in the amount of $1,000. That's all.
Parties are excused. You may step back on the calendar in the matter of Frawley versus Shapiro. Parties have been sworn in, Judge. You may be seated.
Mr. and Mrs. Frawley, you and Mrs. Shapiro are next-door neighbors, I assume. Is that right?
That's correct.
According to your complaint, Mr. and Mrs. Frawley, the defendant's gardener caused some damage to a cover of a trailer that was on your property.
Correct.
And you want the defendant to pay for the damage to that cover. Additionally, you say that you were forced to put up 2 separate fences on your property, separating your property from the defendant's property, and you want her to pay for half the cost of those fences. That's what your case is about. The defendant has a cross-complaint that you maliciously cut down a branch of a tree that was very precious to her, and she says that you have been harassing her, so she has a counterclaim. So this sounds like a very untenable situation for people to be in, neighbors who don't get along. So let's hear about the problem with this tarp cover that was covering your trailer.
Well, on December 18th of last year, my wife and I returned home from work and noticed our travel trailer cover had sustained damage. We noticed or examined actually the height and the pattern of the damage and concluded that it was caused by the exhaust of a gardener's leaf blower.
It had burned like a 4-foot-long hole across the cover, and you could tell that it was a burn mark.
Let me see, you have pictures of it, I assume?
Yes, sure. That's it.
Okay, so you came home and you found these burn holes. What did you do?
My husband had seen our gardeners on our driveway before when he happened to be home from work a day when they had come, and he had asked them not to stand on our property because their backpack thing actually put some dents in our trailer. But when he mentioned it to them, they just kind of acted like there was a language barrier, like they maybe didn't understand.
So you had seen them standing on your property, blowing the leaves on the defendant's property through her property.
Well, I only observed them the one time, and there was an individual standing on her property and an individual standing on my driveway, and I asked the one standing on my driveway if he could conduct his business from her property, and he appeared as though there was a language barrier.
Right. Okay. So when this incident happened, though, I actually typed up a little note and put it in her mailbox, just asking her for the name and address of her gardeners, because they should have been the ones that we needed to address this issue with. And she chose to ignore my request.
You did receive this note.
I did. So when that went unacknowledged, I said...
Why, just a second, why didn't you acknowledge this letter?
I thought it was harassment.
You did? Why would you think this was harassment?
Because it's been going on for some time.
Prior to December 19th, when had the plaintiffs communicated with you?
I have a dog that I walk every morning. They had acquired a very small terrier, allowing it to go to the bathroom on my front lawn. I ran outside and asked her to never let that dog go on my lawn again, and she grabbed me. I thought that she perhaps would throw me to the floor, to the grass.
When was this, Mrs. Shapiro?
It was last fall. I can't tell you the date.
What month?
Well, we'll say November, October. I don't know exactly.
October, November. Prior to that, had you had any difficulty with the
Yes,
plaintiffs?
they cut the tree. I have pictures here. They cut the crown out of the tree.
When was that?
That was in June or July.
Okay, so you had the tree and you had the dog, months apart. But this letter is very clear. This letter says, please provide us with the name and address and phone number of your gardener because he has damaged our property.
I ignored it because I thought it was more harassment.
Okay, go ahead. What's next?
Well, then I sent her a certified letter return receipt, and she refused to pick it up from the post office. So then I sent one via regular mail so that I would have all my bases covered.
Okay, and you did in fact receive this letter asking for $280.25.
I didn't receive it as certified mail.
No, you received it as regular mail.
As regular
And did you
mail.
do anything after you received this letter?
No.
Okay, go ahead.
Well, then we ended up putting up a wood fence just because we could tell that with no help from the defendant, there was no way we were going to be able to protect our belongings from future damage without preventing them from walking on our property completely.
Let me see.
So this was the $1,400 we spent on the wood
I'm not
fence.
interested in the $1,400 fence. I'm interested in a picture of the
pictures?
fence. Okay, so now you have a fence up, so there's no more problem with the gardener.
Correct.
Good. That saves a lot of trouble. Nice fence. She's not going to pay for it. Put it up, you pay for it.
Okay.
What's next?
We ended up having to put up a chain link fence to protect the rest of our property because there was an incident where some stuff was stolen from the side of our house.
You don't think Mrs. Shapiro did?
No, I know she didn't do it.
Of course. So you put up another fence, and you also want her to pay for half of that fence.
Correct.
But that's not going to happen. Okay. Okay. Now I'll hear you, Mrs. Shapiro, with regard to these holes that were clearly burn marks. Did you discuss it with your gardeners?
I did discuss it with my gardener. I don't see my gardener. They come when I'm at work.
Well, then you have to be responsible for it. If you didn't make an inquiry to your gardener as to what happened, they have reason to at least believe, based upon what they had previously observed and based upon the burn marks that are in their tarp, that it happened as a result of leaf blowing and the hot exhaust coming out of the back of these machines. They asked you, please find out what happened. You clearly responded to them, I'm not doing anything. If you refuse to give them the information, they have no recourse but to sue you. Now I want to get to this tree business, because that's really what I consider the gravamen of your countersuit, which is that they cut down a tree that was on your property. Well, let me hear about it.
They didn't cut it down, Your Honor. They cut the crown out of the tree. That's the center part of the tree that grows the highest. It's a specimen tree. It's full grown. It was given to me by my nephew shortly after I moved into the house. This nephew is a very precious person, was a very precious person to me. He was dying of cancer, and he said to me, Aunt Jeanette, every time you go look out your front door, you'll remember me. And so to me, it became a symbol of a tree of life.
Well, let me see what they did, Ms. Shapiro.
This, the pictures, Your Honor, were taken on the early part of March after I received the summons to appear. The damage was done in June or July of last year.
What was the tree hanging over their property?
Some of the tree did hang over the property, but not that part of the tree.
We didn't trim anything that wasn't hanging over our property, Your Honor. Why would we trim the crown of her tree? That doesn't make any sense.
Real cases, real people. Judge Judy. Karen and Brett Frawley claim their vehicle cover was ruined by neighbor Jeanette Shapiro's gardeners. Jeanette claims the Frawleys mutilated her tree.
Go ahead.
It was a full tree, and now it is in a V. It was even more drastically cut when it was first done. It's had
it's not
6 months.
Well, it grew back.
Yes, but the crown is gone. You can see
That
the
may
V
be,
there.
but if the crown was hanging over their property...
It was not hanging.
Well, I can't tell that. I can't tell that.
I understand that.
And if they did that in July, why didn't you register a complaint in July?
Because I thought this was just more harassment. I don't communicate with these people.
Why not?
Because she shouts at me.
Just a minute. You said, listen, in July, this was the first thing that you told me that happened.
It goes further back. It goes maybe a year or two further back, when she called me to her driveway and said to me, I want to talk to you, Jeanette. I walked over there, and she says, tell your gardener not to blow any leaves on our lawn.
So that's not harassment, Mrs. Shapiro.
I said, if you want to talk to the gardener, please, you have my permission to talk to the gardener at any time.
They don't speak English.
I don't know that they do or not speak English.
Well, he said he tried to speak to them, and there was a language barrier. So I assume when he says a language barrier, he means that they don't speak English, because he speaks English. Very unfortunate. In any event, I have no proof that whatever they cut from your specimen tree was not hanging over their property. It's impossible to tell from these photographs. But since you refused to give them the information which would have allowed them to pursue your gardener, you have to be responsible for the damage yourself. You have the bill?
Yeah, it's in that letter. It was the original amount that we had asked her for, the $280.25.
Judgment for the plaintiff, $280.25. Thank you.
Excuse me one moment.
Yes, just a minute.
I'd like to show you a picture of my side of the fence. There are 3 signs that are posted on my side of the fence that say, keep out, no trespassing. That's on a front patio of mine. I would like to have those removed. That's right in direct line of my front door.
Well, maybe her gardeners know by now, and we could take it down.
Well, then let's talk about that, because these 2 signs, keep out, private, posted, are really unattractive. So why don't you take the signs down? It would be nice. She would like that.
Sure.
And I can understand that it faces her front door and it doesn't look nice. This looks like a nice neighborhood. Got it?
No problem.
I got it.
Good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Parties are excused. You may step out.
That tree was a very, very precious tree to me.
We tried to be cordial with the neighbor.
It means a great deal. It was actually a tree of life as far as I'm concerned.
You live and learn, I guess.
And now the next case.
All parties on Denon versus Avalos. Step forward, please.
40-year-old poet Cheryl Denon is suing her ex-boyfriend, 38-year-old steelworker Thomas Avilas, for the down payment on a car. Thomas says the vehicle was a gift in return for teaching her to drive.
Ms. Denon, according to your complaint, you met the defendant while you were online in a chat room. And at the time you were married, you began a relationship, I assume, on the computer with the defendant. Is that right?
Correct.
And then there came a time when that relationship developed. You ended up terminating your marriage, or your husband terminated your marriage. And while you were in this relationship with the defendant, after you and your husband separated, you claimed that you loaned the defendant $2,500 as a down payment for a new used car.
Correct.
That's not true.
Shortly thereafter, you decided that he wasn't right for you, and you terminated the relationship with him. You and your husband are now back together. You want your $2,500 back.
Correct.
When did you first begin to have this chat room relationship with the defendant?
I would say about December of 1998.
Okay, and when did you first meet him?
Possibly maybe 2 or 3 weeks later.
And when did you and your husband separate?
We separated in 1999.
When in 1999?
August.
At that time, did you begin a relationship with the defendant?
We had a relationship going on and off the whole time.
Okay.
And the reason for my husband leaving was because of that.
When did you give him this $2,500?
December of 2000.
When did you separate from him?
About 3 days before Christmas.
So within weeks of giving him the $2,500, is that right?
Correct.
And tell me about the conversations that took place prior to you giving him the $2,500.
Well, we discussed that we were, quote unquote, going to be a couple and that he was going to teach me how to drive.
You didn't know how to drive?
No, I don't know how to drive. And he was going to help me regain some independence, which was good. And at first it was spoken that when I lent him the $2,500 that he was going to pay me back.
She said it was a gift.
Shh, shh, shh. Don't.
He said that he was going to pay me back when he got his income tax. Then, like maybe a few days later, we talked about, hey, well, we're going to be together. What's yours is mine.
Who said that?
Both of us.
So you said that?
No, I didn't.
Yes, you did, Tommy.
No. You said that. You said you both said it. So you said it. What's yours is mine and what's mine is mine. Right?
Yeah.
Well, isn't that the way it works? I can't say it any other way. What's yours is mine and what's mine is yours? That doesn't even sound right. Okay. Did you have any discussion with him about the $2,500 when you decided to terminate the relationship?
Yes, I did. He came over to my house maybe before New Year's, and he had Christmas decorations in my window, and I was not home. He took all the Christmas decorations out of my house that he had put into my house, which I would have returned them to him anyway. I did not want to keep them, okay?
Okay.
And I had come home, and he was there.
Well, did you ask him at that point about your $2,500?
Yes, I did. And he said to me, don't ask me about that if you want to be friends with me. And I thought that was very stupid because I was not going to be friends with him when there's other circumstances why I didn't want him that I found out later through the relationship.
Okay. Mr. Avalos.
Yes.
Let's talk about this car. Under what circumstances do you claim that she gave you this $2,500?
Your Honor, we had a deal. You know, we had a car accident. We had mentioned in my car.
What do you mean we had a car accident?
She was in the car with me in my van, and we had a car accident.
But you were driving?
I was driving.
So you had a car accident?
Okay, well, she was in the car with me.
She was in the car with you, but you had the accident?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay.
Okay, so at that time, she made a suggestion, why don't you go buy a new car? And I said, where would I get the money for that? She said, well, look, let's make a deal. I will give you the $2,000 for a down payment, and you will teach me how to drive, and it'll be our car. I said, sure, that would be fine.
Okay.
Okay, so we go to the dealer, we pick this car out. I said, I really can't afford it. She says, look, I'll help you with the payments. I said, oh, you sure about this? She said, yeah. Now, she gave me $2,000. It wasn't $2,500.
I assume she's going to be able to show me that she took out or she wrote a check for $2,000.
No, she gave me cash. She gave the dealer cash.
I would assume you have the receipt for that. Does somebody have the receipt for what you gave to the dealer?
Sales slip has been returned.
To where?
To that dealer. When I took the car back, saying I can no longer afford this car.
How much was the entire purchase price of the car?
$5,000.
Is that right?
Correct.
So on Christmas Eve night, I had a call from her husband stating the fact that she's back with him now.
Okay, so they're back together.
And he would be around to pick up her things. So they came around the 26th, picked up things that she had at my house. Her husband had stated on the fact that he was going to come around and pick up the things, said, keep the car. We don't want it. If they were going to pick up half the car or come and get the car, they would have came and said something to me on the 26th.
Did you just say they're going to come and pick
up? Well, you know what
half
I'm saying.
No. Listen to me.
Okay.
Look, you're not receiving.
Yeah, sure.
Did you just say to me that if they were going to pick up half the car, they would have come and picked up half the car?
If they were going to say anything about the car, he would have came around on the 26th and said, we want the $2,000 back.
All right. Mr. Avalos, listen to me. You just cooked your own goose. You said to me your agreement with the plaintiff was this was going to be your car as a couple.
Right.
And she was going to, according to you, put down not only $2,000, but also help you with the car payments.
But they told me to keep the car. They said they didn't want it.
They
said
don't
didn't
want the car.
Right.
They don't want the car.
So I took the car back.
What do you mean you took the car back? You never gave it to them.
No, I took it back to the dealership.
Fine. And what did you buy?
A cheaper car that I could afford.
How much did you pay for the cheaper car?
$4,000.
And how much later? 3 weeks after you purchased it?
Yes, about 4 weeks afterwards. It was in
You never
January.
like to say you're right. All
It was
right.
in
So
January.
4 weeks after.
Yes, Your Honor.
You brought it back. How much did the dealer give you for the $5,000 car towards the $4,000 car?
$2,500.
All this you don't have any proof of. You have no paperwork, you have no nothing.
I have
You
the
know
owner's
you're coming-
card.
You know you're coming to court. You know, usually people bring paperwork when they come to court.
He kept the paperwork for the other car, so I don't have the
You
paperwork
make
for the new car.
copies. So if you have paperwork for the new car would have shown how much money he gave you for the old car.
True.
Good. Now you're getting better. So you used, according to you, $2,000 of her money to purchase this car that you are currently driving.
Yes.
And according to you, Mr. Avalos, this was supposed to be your car as a couple, right?
Yes, but on Christmas Eve, she devastated me. She said she no longer wanted to be the couple, that she wanted
Well, how
to
do you
take the
think her
car
husband
back.
felt?
Well, he's the one that told me, he said, keep the car.
I wasn't talking about the car. I was talking about his wife.
They were divorced.
Because of whom?
Not because of me.
Because of the two of you.
Not really.
That wasn't because of you.
No.
When you started to
They
have
had
this...
problems long before I came.
Well, that's what she told you when she was talking to you in the chat room, but they were still married, right?
True.
True. All right. You got to give her $2,000 back. Judgment for the plaintiff in the amount of $2,000. That's all.
Parties are excused. Spring versus Whitford.
Thanks, Bert.
Parties have been sworn in, Judge. You may be seated.
Miss Spring, you and the defendant were working together on a construction project. You're both electricians. And it is your claim, Miss Spring, that the defendant assaulted you.
Yes.
He says he never touched you. So let me hear. When did you start working on this site, and what caused the problem between the two of you?
February 12th. I did the job. It was the end of the day, picked up my tools, and was walking back towards the gang box, where it's a central area where we put all our tools and contractors' tools to put away for the end of the day. And I get to the gang box area, and he is having a fit because he can't find a power cord to plug in his lift, which takes you up higher or lower on the job. And he's just going on and on because he can't find this cord. And I had it over with my things. I just didn't have, I had too much stuff already. I didn't have room for that too, so I was going to go back and get the cord. He's just going on and on about how he can't find the cord. And finally I said to him, you know what, I have the cord, just relax, I'll go get it. And he just exploded even more, saying profanities and don't you know what you're doing on this job site. And I told him at that time I walked around the gang box and back of the doors were open, and he followed me.
What did you walk around this box for?
Because I had a coat. This is kind of a diagram that I wrote for you to kind of look better there as far as what I'm talking about. I had to get my jacket, and it was on a cart on the other side of the game box, and he followed me. The argument continued as he followed me around. I reached underneath to get my coat, and as I came back up to face him, he grabbed me by the neck with both hands and pushed me like a jerking motion really hard into some boxes that were behind me. I was in shock when this happened. It happened so fast. I pushed him off me, and he backed up like this, and then he started coming at me again, and then I heard the voice of the foreman saying, come on, you guys, let's get out of here. Knock that off. Quit arguing. Let's go. And I looked at him like, didn't you just see what happened? This man just touched me. And I couldn't speak because he knocked the wind out of me. He was gone. He left. When the foreman said that, he left. He was out the door. It took me a while to get myself together to be able to say to him that he just put his hands on me. He just choked me. Aren't you going to do something? When the foreman heard that, then he went to where he was and talked to him. I don't know what was said. Then the foreman came back. He drove off, and he told me, well, there's nothing I can do. He said he's not going to apologize, and there's nothing I can do. When I got home, I called my union official. He said that he would be on the job the following day, and then he told me to call the police, and that's what I did.
Can I see the report that you filed?
Yes.
Do you have all 6 pages, Your Honor?
I don't have all 6 pages. I don't have 6 pages.
I have a complete report over here if you need it.
I'd like to see it. Okay, so you filed a police report, and then what happened?
That day, the union officials came out. They also took a report and walked around and talked to people. Then I filed a I filled out the paperwork to go see the doctor for workman's comp, and that's where I went.
Why did you need workman's comp for?
I had severe strain in my neck and shoulder. There's all my doctor's records.
I'd like to see the doctor's records.
He put me on limited duty, so when I went back to work to give the doctor my foreman, he said there's no such thing as limited duty. There's a form all the way in the back, a pink form about this big, that describes our job description and that there is no limited duty. So then he gave me a quit.
He gave you a what?
A quit instead of a reduction of workforce.
And he fired you?
Excuse me? Yes.
He fired you?
Yes, because he had a choice to make whether he stay or I stay, and I was the one that was told to go.
What happened with the case with the district attorney's office? I assume you filed, the case was dismissed for lack of evidence.
Exactly.
It was not prosecuted for lack of evidence.
Right.
Did you go before any other boards?
The union. I filed a grievance with the union.
And what happened with that grievance?
They sent me a letter that said no decision. They didn't make a decision one way or the other. And I have all the transcripts right here. I don't have a witness, but at the grievance, they did find somebody that heard us arguing and heard boxes being jostled around, and his statement is where I tagged in here, and that's what I have as far as a witness. It starts with the first yellow paper.
I have a letter in addition to that, Your Honor.
All right, sir. Let me hear your version of these events, please.
My story is basically the same. We did get into a verbal confrontation, but I did not touch her. Now, on the police report, on the top, the disposition...
Don't tell me, please. First I asked you what happened. Then you'll point me in the direction of evidence that you want me to look at. I asked you what happened.
I will agree with everything except for the fact that I did touch her, and I did not touch her. I did get in her face, and yes, we did have a verbal confrontation.
What about boxes being sort of shuffled around?
No boxes were shuffled around whatsoever, Your Honor.
No, the witness here seems to say that there was some boxes shuffled around, although the witness didn't see what happened back there.
As I recall, at the time the officer took the reports, he did not note it in his police report, and he talked to everybody on the job site. When he came back to interview me, he asked the foreman if anybody else had any additional information, and they did not add that to the police report.
I don't know whether you put your hands around her neck, sir, because she gives conflicting stories about that. First you say, in the initial report that you gave to the police, and this is in your report, Spring said her comment to Whitford made him angry. He grabbed her around the collar of her sweatshirt, near the neck area, and then shoved her into a nearby stack of boxes. Now that somehow escalated from grabbing her around the collar of her sweatshirt to having put his hands around your throat, because that's what you said some 45 minutes later. That he put his hands around your throat.
I had a hooded sweatshirt on. That was what was around my neck. He didn't take the collar and pull it. He had his hands around my sweatshirt and my throat.
How long have you been a member of this union?
17 years.
How many complaints have you filed?
As far as?
As far as any job-related action.
Oh, yeah. I had worked for another contractor, probably 4 years prior. And I had it, well, they let me go because they said that I wasn't getting along with other workers.
No. How many times have you filed either a grievance or attempted to apply for workman's compensation?
Workman's comp?
Yes.
Yes, I've had a back injury earlier to this, about 4 years earlier to this, and a wrist injury also.
Real cases, real people. Judge Judy. Electrician Jordana Spring says she was assaulted on the job by fellow electrician Peter Whitford. Jordana claims during an argument, Peter choked her.
Now, the one that happened 4 years ago, was that about the same time that you had a problem at another job site? You said it was about 4 years ago.
Right. No, the incident that I was referring to was before the Coliseum incident, the wrist in the back.
What was the Coliseum incident?
The wrist in the back.
That was at the same time?
Yes.
Well, you said one happened 4 years ago and one happened 2 years ago.
No. The first injury that I filed a workman's comp for was my neck and my shoulder and my wrist, and that happened on the Coliseum job. And the incident I was telling to you prior to this happened on the BART job, where I was let go because of controversy, working with people.
And when was that?
6 years ago.
6 years?
Yeah.
Did you receive any compensation from your union with regard to this incident?
This one, no.
What about with regard to neck, shoulder, and wrist 4 years ago?
Yes.
What?
$100 a month, and with taxes it comes out to like $96 a month.
Now, you said you had something else you wanted to show me, Mr. Whitford.
Yes, Your Honor. Here's the primary treating physician's progress report.
Can I see it, please?
In the yellow and the highlight, you will note that it says it's dated the 13th, and you'll note that the change in treatment plan is circled.
Yes.
That means that you have a pre-existing condition.
Yes.
And then under the treatment plan, have there been any changes in treatment plan? If so, why? That's not answered because she was under treatment at the particular time.
Anything else you want to show me?
Here's a letter from the union.
I don't read letters.
Okay. This is attached to the hearing. This are the results of the hearing.
Oh, that's the result of the hearing. I'll read it.
Okay. And that letter shows that no action was taken. And then I have a second statement that was also attached to the hearing notes.
It says no decision or action could be taken at this time.
Right. They dropped it.
Go ahead.
And then also on the police report, if you'll note, they wrote the disposition on top. That it was T2'd, whatever that means. That means...
But they're not prosecuting it.
Right.
There's insufficient evidence.
Right. That's
What
exactly
else?
what they did with it. And I tried to get the other sheets, but they sit there and keep in the computer for only 3 months, and then they purge the computer, I guess.
What else?
And then attached to the union filing, also, which is a part of this, we have another story here, the second story, where this one says, I now lunged at her, grabbed her by the...
Could I see it, please?
Grabbing her with both hands, and I pushed her into a stack of boxes behind her. You know, a little more melodramatic, so the story seems to keep escalating as we go.
What else?
Now, regarding the incident, I sat there and walked away primarily because I did not want the argument to escalate into a physical confrontation.
You didn't go to work the next day, sir. You want to explain to me why?
I called in because I was afraid it would escalate into a physical confrontation.
Why?
And I don't cross that line.
Why?
My mother is a judge, and I've been taught you don't cross that line.
Well, you had an employer, you had a supervisor, you had somebody else there who you could have said very easily to, listen, I don't want to go anywhere near her. Did you report to work the next day?
I did, yes.
Okay. I don't want to go anywhere near her. Right?
Exactly. I didn't want to take a chance of anything escalating. I did not want to be around her just in case something could happen, in case she could pull those strings, if you know what I mean.
Mr.
And,
Whitford,
yes,
I want to explain something to you, sir. You and I both know that you put your hands on her. There isn't a question in my mind that you put your hands on her, sir. I don't think that you injured her. That's where I think your problem is, madam. I don't think that you were injured. I think that you were offended that he put his hands on you. You probably opened up a fresh mouth to him. He opened up a fresh mouth to you, and the fight was on. And he was probably treating you like he would treat some guy, which is he grabbed you by the sweatshirt, and you pushed him, and he pushed you. Ordinarily, it would be gone. It would be over. You really weren't hurt, but he didn't say sorry. So, Mr. Whitford,
yes,
don't try to razzle-dazzle me with I didn't put my hands on her, sir. You and I both know you didn't. Even one of your cohorts said in the transcript, I didn't see what happened. I couldn't see anything that happened, but I know that they were behind the tool shed, and I heard a scuffle, and I heard arguing, and then I heard something like something going into boxes. That's from somebody that works with you.
Yes.
He didn't get fired. So he had no reason to make up a story about hearing somebody get pushed into boxes. And that's what you did. You pushed her into boxes. I don't, however, believe you, Miss Spring, when you say you were injured. Injured to the extent that you could not work. Do you understand me? Okay.
Our job is not the same. It's a lot more physical than a lot of other jobs. That's
You
why
weren't hurt. He grabbed you by the sweatshirt collar and he pushed you into some boxes. The boxes raffled. You got up, you pushed him back, and then the foreman came over, and said, what's going on here? And you both backed off. Foreman had some words with him and said, listen, why don't you, just problem, why don't you just take off? But he's not allowed to put his hands on you. That's the bottom line. And I don't know why they couldn't come to this conclusion when they had all kinds of hearings. I know why the district attorney chose not to pursue this case. The district attorney chose not to pursue this case because you weren't hurt. And the union, I don't know why the union couldn't come to a conclusion. It was so easy for me in these few short moments. Judgment for the plaintiff in the amount of $500. That's all. Don't put your hands on her.
Parties are excused. You may step out.
Well, I guess the moral of the story is if you tell your story enough times, finally, eventually you're going to find somebody who believes it.
I'm really happy the way things turned out, and I'm glad that Judy heard me.
I'm tired. I'm glad it's over. I get to move on now, finally.
And now the next case.
All parties in the matter of Gretsch versus Garrett's. Step forward, please.
50-year-old store manager Deborah Gretsch is suing her son, 26-year-old construction worker Troy Gerrits, for an unpaid loan. Troy says the loan should be offset because his 18-year-old brother ran up his cable bill by renting movies.
All right, I believe that there are certain things that we can agree upon in this case, so it will simplify the issue. Mrs. Gretsch, the defendant is your son.
Yes.
Who is 26 years old?
Yes.
According to your complaint, there came a time when he fell behind in some bills, he wanted to consolidate his bills, and you agreed to loan him $6,000, $6,000 some odd dollars. And you acknowledged that that loan was made to you.
Yes.
He did repay some of the loan for a considerable period of time. The balance on the loan is some $4,400.
Right.
And you acknowledge that the balance of the loan is some $4,400. Is that right?
Yes.
But you have a defense.
Yes.
Your defense is that your brother, your other son, 17, moved in with you.
Yes.
And ran up a huge cable bill.
Yes.
The amount of $3,500.
Yes.
That you believe is your mother's responsibility, that you want to deduct from the loan.
Yes.
Okay, that's your defense. Now, was your 17-year-old living with you before he moved in with his brother?
Yes. But he moved in with his brother and his dad.
His brother and his father?
Mm-hmm.
Do you live with your father?
Not no more.
But you did?
Yep, and my grandparents.
And when did he move in with you?
1999. I don't know quite which month it was. January.
And when did he start running up this cable bill?
As soon as he moved in.
How do you know that?
Well, he's the only one that was in the room renting the movies.
So he was renting the movies from...
Pay-per-view.
Pay-per-view.
Pay-per-view movies.
Is that right?
Yes.
Who got the first bill?
I get all the bills.
So when you got your February bill and you saw all these bills on there, what did you do about it?
Put a lock code on it. He figured that out, so I disconnected it from the phone. And then the bills don't come, not unless it's hooked up to the phone. Once I hook the phone up, I get this large amount of bill. For
Just a minute. He could not have run up a $3,500 cable bill in 1 month.
No, it wasn't. It was over a year, year and a half, I believe.
Well, then that's your responsibility. That's your responsibility.
For me to pay for him?
He's living under your control in your home. You say you got all the bills, so you were in control of all the bills, Mr. Gerads.
Yes.
It was your responsibility to see to it that an appropriate mechanism was put in place so that he could not rent any more of these movies after you saw that he was abusing the privilege after the first month.
I'll let him explain what he did through all this, renting the movies and everything, that I feel that she should have to pay me because he was a minor. No matter what, if he was, was living with her or not.
Just a minute, when did your father move out?
My father never moved out.
So what about your father?
He doesn't have a job, no nothing. So what am I supposed to do, support him too?
No, sir. What you're supposed to do is if you can't get your brother to stop renting pay-per-views that you are responsible for, you kick him out of the house.
He wasn't 18.
So you're not responsible for him, sir, to keep him in your house? Kick him out.
How would you feel about kicking your own son out at 15, 16 years old?
Just a minute. He's not your son. Kick him out.
He's my brother, though.
Then pay his bills. If you can't figure out a way to control him, pay his bills. Don't say, I'm not going to pay his bills. I'm going to pay this, and I'm going to deduct it from what I owe my mother. What kind of stupidity is that?
To get the money out of her.
No. You elected to take your brother into your house. Evidently, he chose not to live with his mother. He chose to live in your house with your unemployed father.
I do not own the house. He moved in with my father and my grandparents, and I was living there, and he was living there with them.
But evidently, the cable bill was in your name.
Okay, the cable bill's in my name,
Then
but
you
who
have
should
to
take care of it?
Just a second. Cut it off.
I did cut it off finally after I got that bill that had a large amount on it.
You should have cut it off immediately when you saw he was doing it. Immediately. That was your responsibility. It was wrong. He's a minor. But as a result of your negligence and not seeing to it that his conduct was monitored while in your home, you can't visit that on your mother. Judgment for the plaintiff in the amount of $4,400. That's all.
Parties are excused. You may step out.
He's a minor.
Of Wright, Parker versus Van Tyne. Parties have been sworn in, Judge. You may be seated. Ladies, have seats, please.
Ms. Parker, the defendant had been a friend of yours.
Yes, ma'am.
And according to your complaint, on the 17th of August, you asked her to watch your dog, small dog, Pomeranian.
Yes, ma'am.
And on the 20th of August, you contacted her to get the dog back, and she refused to give the dog back to you. And she has not given the dog back to you to this day. Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
The defendant has a counterclaim. He says because the dog has been with her now for 81 days, she wants to be paid for boarding the dog. And the second defense that she has is that she actually purchased the dog for $1 from your estranged husband. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. Shh. Okay. Tell me the circumstances of the defendant coming into possession of the dog on the 17th of August.
I was having some problems at home with my stepchildren that I've raised for 10 years. My husband was an over-the-road truck driver. And I got very upset, and I called him, and I asked him to please come home and help me straighten it out. So he said that he would do that. He was going to deliver the load he had, and he would come home. About an hour later, my stepdaughter informed me that she was leaving. She wasn't going to take this anymore, whatever this was. And she was leaving and had someplace she and her brother could go. So I was very upset, and I just said, well, you know, Danielle, I can't take this anymore. You've been threatening to leave for a year. I said, the door's not locked. If you need to leave, then leave. And so they did. So I spoke with my husband several times during the week. Apparently, he had spoken with Danielle. She had called him on his cell phone and told him...
That's his daughter?
Yes. That she would tell him where they were if he promised not to tell me. So he made that promise to her. And when he informed me of this, I said, you shouldn't have done that because I'm here and I'm in charge of them and I should know where they are. Well, a week went by. He called me on the 16th at noon and said he'd be in on the 17th. We'd get the kids home, we'd get it all straightened out, and everything would be fine. When the 17th came, he was going to call me to come pick him up because he can't park his truck where we live. So he didn't call, and he didn't come home. And by 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon, I got really concerned. I thought he was in an accident. So I called his dispatcher, who told me he was in the area, but he couldn't tell me where he was because my husband had told him not to. So that night, I got very, very depressed. And I had talked to Miss Van Tyne through the week, and she knew what I was going through, and the children were at her house, but she never said anything to me about it. As a matter of fact...
She a friend of the family?
She was my friend. I had lived across the street from her for almost a year.
Okay, so now we're at the 17th of August, and
Yeah.
you don't know that the children are at her house?
No, because she had told my daughter the next time that she was fed up with me to just leave the house and
That
call.
is not true. Whatever. Let's get to the dog.
All right. She had watched my dog twice in the past for me. And she always told me, you know, she's no problem. Anytime you need me to watch her, just bring her down. It's no problem. I never had a problem getting her back or anything.
Okay, so
We
what
were-
happened on the 17th?
I called her at 7 o'clock at night. And she said to me, I have a date with this, I don't know, some doctor that had called her and wanted her to go out on a date. So I won't be here. She says, just drop her over the fence. She'll know enough where to go.
That's not true. I'll get to you in a minute.
And I said, okay, fine. So about 8:30 I got there. I went in the backyard, and I put Tiffany through the doggy door. So I left and went home. The next morning, I was a little bit better emotionally, and I really missed Tiffany, so I called her house and left a message to call me. Well, she never called Saturday. I did the same thing on Sunday, and she didn't return my call. And Monday, I went to the cell phone company, found out my husband had been talking to Debbie through the week on the cell phone, so I knew then where him and the kids were. So I went to Debbie's to get the dog, and nobody was home.
Okay. Now, how old is this dog?
She just turned 7.
When did you get her?
I got her in October of '94.
How long have you been married?
3 years.
So you had the dog previous to your being
4
married?
years before I got married.
Okay. I'll hear you now.
Okay. First of all, the children called me very distressed. I had never met her estranged husband, Dean, up until the children had been with me for a week. And the only reason that I did befriend this woman was because of the things that I had seen going on with the children.
Okay.
And so,
let me
nevertheless,
let me get by that for a moment. The children came to your house, and you made an arrangement with her husband to keep the children at your house. I'm putting 2 and 2 together until he got back.
Right.
He came back sometime around the 17th of August. Did he stay in your home with the children?
He did he rented a room from me until they got an apartment.
When did they move out?
I guess they stayed about 3-4 weeks.
Okay.
Now, I did tell her that I could not watch this dog. She
No, you
called
did
me,
not.
and I told her...
Don't interrupt her.
When she called me, I did not want to watch the dog because of what was going on domestically with these children.
Okay.
I didn't want her having any contact with them or to risk their safety again. So I did tell her I couldn't watch the dog. She then, and my neighbor did witness her throw the dog over my fence. She didn't put her in the doggy door. this is in August at 7. It isn't dark at 7 in August. But
Observing
my neighbor
dark.
did see her throw this dog over my fence. And so when I get home, after telling Laura that I could not watch her, the dog is there.
But then we come to the 20th, when she did, in fact, come back for the dog.
Right.
So
and I have
my
the-
question to you, Ms. Van Tyne, is why did you not give her back her dog on the 20th?
Well, because she called the Charleston. She called the Charleston Police Department, and I do have the police report from that here. And he does state that she was irate and also threatened to drive her van through my house.
That's not what I said.
And yes, ma'am.
I'm asking you, why didn't
I mean,
you
the
give-
reason that because I was not there when she came for the dog, I
With
told
my
her I'm not
husband.
going to be home.
Miss Parker, if you interrupt again, you're going home empty-handed. Do you understand?
Anyway,
you gotta give me a good answer. She wants her dog back. You know she wants her dog back. Why didn't you make arrangements to get her dog back through the police department the next day?
Because of the harassment that was going on with her, and then I was advised by the police officer not to have contact with this woman since she had...
So you give the dog to the police officer, and the police officer brings the dog to her house. End of conflict.
Real cases, real people. Judge Judy. Laura Wright Parker says former neighbor Deborah Van Tyne refuses to return her Pomeranian named Tiffany. Deborah says Laura abandoned the animal in her backyard.
Miss Van Tyne, you had no right to keep her dog after the 20th. So there goes your counterclaim. You want her to pay so much a day for the 81 days that you've boarded this dog. That's ridiculous, because she wanted her dog back, and you should have given her dog back. Now, you say that you bought the dog from her husband for $1?
He purchased the animal. He's the one who purchased the animal in the beginning in '94.
If her husband purchased this dog for her in 1994, this was her dog, and he has no right to sell it for $1 or $10 or $20. So pick a time that's convenient for you to bring the dog to the police station so that the dog can be transported to the plaintiff's home.
I guess this weekend.
Perfect. As far as your counterclaim is concerned, reimbursement for dog care, forget that. Related expenses, forget that. Pain and suffering.
Yeah, her, threatening my life. Her brother's calling me from New York, threatening to whack me.
Why don't you just give her a dog back?
This was not over the dog. This was over the children.
Listen, you never get in the middle of two married people. That's not a very smart
Well,
thing
the
to
children
do.
being abused and no one else being there. He asked me to take the children into a safe place, and I did.
But then you kept both he and the children in your home for a month. It's not a very good idea. You should have given her dog back on the 20th. That was a very foolish thing to do. Judgment for the plaintiff. The dog will be returned. I will prepare an order.
Your Honor?
Yes.
I have one question.
Yes.
I also put down that I'd like some kind of compensation for emotional distress and pain and suffering.
That you don't get.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Parties are excused. You may step out.
All I care about is I come out here to get my dog, and that's what I got.
She was beating the children and the animals.
Of course not. Don't make best friends.
I wouldn't hesitate to step in and help again. Not in the least.
And now the next case.
All parties in the matter of Gilmore versus Jones. Step forward, please.
44-year-old air traffic controller Kevin Gilmore is suing Melinda and James Jones for a bicycle accident caused by their dog. The Joneses say Kevin is also at fault.
Mr. Gilmore, your complaint is that the defendant's dog caused your bicycle to crash with you on it.
That's correct.
And you want to be compensated for your medical bills, your pain and suffering, and basically for the injuries that you sustained.
That's correct.
When did this happen?
On June 14th.
Where were you?
I was riding my bicycle in front of the defendant's home. It's a rural two-lane highway, and as I approached the defendant's house, their dog came up out of the ditch and ran in front of me. I had no chance.
Where was there a ditch?
I have photos of that here.
Can I see it, please?
The arrows point the direction I was coming from and going. And a dog could easily have been in there and not be seen.
So you assume that the dog came out of this area
That's
here?
correct. Right
which is
in
where
there.
the ditch was?
That's
Okay.
correct. So as I approached that area where the X is, the dog ran out in front of me. I had no chance to avoid it. I had traffic on my left, and I grabbed onto the handlebars as tight as I could, knew I was going to hit the dog. I hit the dog, flew through the air, landed on my right side, and hit my head pretty hard, cracked my helmet, was unconscious for, I think, several minutes. I'm not sure. When I came to, there were several people standing around me. An ambulance had been summoned, and the police were on the way. I was taken to the ER of the local hospital, and I was treated for my wounds, given some medication for pain.
What kind of dog was this? Do you know?
It looks like a black lab mix, maybe a 60 or 70-pound dog, 18 months old, full of energy. No problem trying to keep up with the biker, I guess. But damage to my bike was pretty significant. It's an expensive bike. I think I paid over $5,000 for it. I have a receipt for that initially.
Did you have any opportunity to speak to the defendants?
Yes, I did.
When?
Actually, that night, my wife spoke with Mrs. Jones.
On the telephone or in person?
On the telephone.
Wife? Yeah. Step up. Is it Miss Gilmore?
Mrs. Gilmore, yes. I spoke to Mrs. Jones just to get the information about their address, and I just wanted some basic information. I asked how the dog was, and I told her that my husband had been hurt pretty badly, and that we were probably going to be compiling the costs of out-of-pocket expenses. So
what did she say?
She didn't say much of anything. She was pretty quiet at the other end.
How did she say the dog was?
She said the paw was hurt on the dog, but the next day my husband had talked to him, and I think it was hurt pretty badly.
Do you have any photographs of your injuries?
Yes, I do, ma'am. And it's my contention, ma'am, that the owners knew that this dog was a hazard to bicyclists. On August 20th, after I'd compiled all of my expenses, I had been playing telephone tag with the Jones, trying to get a hold of them so I could drop off my receipts. And on this day I called and I got a hold of one of their children. They said, no, it's okay, you can bring the receipts by. So I did. I brought the receipts by and I asked if I could see the dog. I wanted to see how it was doing. And I was petting the dog, and the son offered information that I thought was very interesting. He said that the dog has been maced. It's been hit at with bicycle pumps. To quote him, he said there's one older biker who says he's going to kill that dog if it puts one more paw on the pavement.
May I see the police report?
Sure.
Yeah.
He states that the dog was tied up. When it saw me, it worked its way loose from the collar, and it ran down the driveway and chased me down. Well, their daughter stated to me that when they saw me coming down the road, they were all saying, "Where's Molly? Where's Molly?" They couldn't find Molly until it was too late. And the boy said, "You hit Molly and you look like you were Superman flying through the air."
Mr. Jones, tell me where you were on the date of this incident.
I was standing in the driveway. The dog was on a leash at that particular time. And she apparently had seen him coming. She pulled her head out from the collar, and she had cut him off. Mr. Gilmore was riding fairly close to the edge of the ditch because she didn't even clear the grass hardly when he hit her. And when I got there, he was not unconscious. The first thing he said to me was, "What happened?" And I had stated to him at that point that he had hit my dog. I guess my deal is that Mr. Gilmore created this incident. He was in the wrong place at the wrong time, and my dog happened to pull her head out and run him down.
Your Honor, may I speak?
Yes.
Mr. Gilmore was riding his bike 35 to 40 miles away from his own residence on a major highway. There's 2,500 miles of bike trails in the state of Minnesota. I know that it's not against the law to ride your bike on a highway, but they're dangerous.
They're not dangerous unless there's a dog off a leash.
She wasn't off the leash, ma'am.
Yes, she was. She was off the leash. Now, if I believe the baloney story that she was on the leash and she managed to wiggle her neck out of the collar, which I don't believe for a second, but let's say I woke up this morning in a good mood and I believe that story, you're still responsible because the collar should have been tight enough so that the dog couldn't whittle out of the collar, especially since you knew that the dog had previously enjoyed chasing cyclists. Okay. Mr. Gilmore, am I correct that what you really wanted from them was your expenses, the
That's all
out-of-pocket
I asked for
expenses?
initially. I asked for them to pay my out-of-pocket expenses. And then they got difficult about that. They said
It started out at $500, went to $1,500, and then you jacked it up $1,500 more after the fact.
The day that this had happened, as Mrs. Gilmore had stated, yes, I did talk to her that evening. And when she asked how my dog was, I told her that her shoulder had been ripped open, but she's going to be fine. She had told me $500 will take care of everything. Mr. Gilmore had called me the following day and said, my wife had no right stating to you that $500 would take care of it. I need to get my bills together to come up with a total. And
Okay,
I said
that's
that
fair.
that's fine. He did that.
He did that. So what were the
yes,
bills that he presented you with?
He presented a bill of $1,192. So now it has gone from $500.
No, it didn't go from 500. No,
to the
Miss
1,200.
Jones, it didn't go from 500. If his wife said that to you, $500 should cover it. And then he called you immediately and he said to you, my wife should not have said that to you because I don't have all my bills together yet.
Exactly.
So he got the bills together and he brought them over to you. So why didn't you pay him?
We felt that
No, I didn't ask you. I'm asking her.
Because I was not able to get back to him.
When did you finally get back to him?
He had called.
When did you get back to
I
him?
did not, ma'am.
Well, then that's the answer. You never bothered to call him back. Okay.
Your Honor. How can we go from almost $1,200 to over $3,000?
Because he's also suing you for pain and suffering. Those were his out-of-pocket expenses. He wasn't asking you for $3,000 then. It was only when you blew him off and didn't call him that he sued you. And he said, I'm going to get some pain and suffering out of this, too.
But when I said to Kevin that I was surprised that he wasn't willing to accept any of the responsibility of this incident, that's when it got jacked up.
It is not his responsibility. It is
It
your
was an
responsibility.
accident that was just something that, a freak thing that had happened.
No. Listen to me, sir. Accidents happen. That's why we have insurance. If you drive a car, which I'm sure you do if you live in a rural area, you have insurance on your car because very few people, unless they are demented, go out into the street with a vehicle intending to cause injury or damage. That's why we call them accidents. This was, in fact, an accident, but it was an accident caused by your dog because your dog was off the leash.
So if I had been in my vehicle backing out of my driveway and he had hit me, he is not any at all responsible?
You don't seem to get the drill here in a court. In a court, I ask the questions and you answer the questions.
I understand
So
that.
far, you've answered the questions and you've gotten most of them wrong. Judgment for the plaintiff in the amount of $3,000. That's all.
Parties are
Thank you, Your Honor.
excused. You may be seated. Ladies, have seats, please.
Mr. Gray, when were you and the defendant divorced?
In 1995.
And how many children do you have?
1.
Your lawsuit involves the child.
Yes.
It is your claim that pursuant to your judgment of divorce, each of you is required to pay 1/2 of the unreimbursed medical expenses for the child.
Yes, ma'am.
And that you took the child to see a psychologist.
Yes.
Child was treated by this psychologist, and you want the defendant to pay 1/2 of that bill.
Yes, ma'am.
Which was how much? $300 and some odd dollars?
For the psychologist alone, it was $195 for her part.
And then?
The medical expenses totaled up $595 for her part.
What were the rest of the medical expenses for?
Doctor's visits for attention deficit disorder, his checkups, medication.
Over what period of time did you have him treated?
From 1998 up to present date.
When did you first present her with the bill?
My wife and I have presented her with the bills every few months all along, and she's refused to pay every time.
What reason did she give you for not wanting to pay?
She says she doesn't have to pay. The courts aren't going to make her.
Miss Gray, was your son diagnosed as having attention deficit disorder?
Yes.
Your defense is that he took him to a doctor that was out of plan.
Yes.
And therefore, since you're covered by some sort of a health plan, is it a private health plan or is it a state health plan?
State.
That since he could have gotten the treatment for nothing, you shouldn't have to pay anything.
Yes.
Are you the primary custodian for the child?
Yes.
Why didn't you take the child then to the doctor?
He was 4 years old. I was going to wait until he started school and see if it was something that he would grow out of.
Well, clearly he didn't.
Once he established the doctor down in Bakersfield, my pediatrician tried to keep in touch with him. Because of the medication, we were trying to keep it in one place. And I am right now, under my pediatrician's recommendation, having a reevaluation done.
So you consented to him taking the child to this doctor after 1998?
I didn't consent to it. He never told me about it.
No, he did tell you about it. Initially, he had to have told you because if the child was prescribed medication in 1998 and you are the child's primary custodian, you would have had to have given the child medication when the child was with you.
Yes, I do give him the medication.
So if you gave him the medication, then you knew that the child had a diagnosis, which I'm sure you discussed with your former husband, so you consented to it.
Yes, with my doctor's consent.
Fine. You didn't say to him at that time, Miss Gray, I don't want you to take the child to your doctor anymore. I will take care of it here.
I've tried to.
You didn't.
No,
Can I see your judgment of divorce, please?
I have told him that. I've never been presented a bill either.
Okay, well, this order clearly says that both parties shall be responsible for one half of all such expenses not otherwise covered by insurance.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay? So when I asked you that question, Miss Gray, you clearly knew when the child was 4 that the child had certain problems, and that you said you wanted to wait until he got to school to see whether the problems would resolve themselves.
He was my first child, and I assumed that it was basically being a 4-year-old child, just busy and playing, and I had him in Head Start. They didn't see any reason to take him in for a diagnosis at that time. My pediatrician wanted to keep it separate and just keep in contact with that doctor that he took him to, who is...
So you consented to him taking the child to that doctor?
I guess
If you
I did.
consented to him taking the child to that doctor, under the terms of your judgment of divorce, you are responsible for one half of the unreimbursed medical bills.
I provided him with a Medi-Cal card. He chose to take him to a doctor that didn't accept Medi-Cal and now wants me to pay for it. And I have provided him with insurance, which he is court-ordered to provide, and he doesn't.
Do you?
Yes, that's the Medi-Cal. I provide that for him.
How do you provide Medi-Cal for him?
I get AFDC because I can't work.
Well, then the state
For
provides it.
7
You don't
years.
provide it. I provide it. Bird provides it, but you don't provide it. You
It's
don't
because
provide
I
it.
can't work.
Whatever. You don't provide it. You can't say, I provide him insurance. You don't provide him with insurance.
He's got insurance because of me.
Well, let me ask you this question, Mr. Gray. Is it true that your former wife is unemployed?
Yes, she has been for 7 years.
So how do you expect her to pay this money?
She gets AFDC, and she is living with the father of her other 2 children that has a $45,000 a year income.
How can you get AFDC if you are married?
I'm not
that
married.
I'm not worried
Just a
about.
second.
She's not married to the man. She's living with him.
Do you have other children?
Yes, I do.
How old are they?
5 and 2.5.
Well, why can't you work?
Because I've been diagnosed with fibromyalgia. In 1998, the counselor that Cody was seeing didn't want me to work because they wanted me home with him. After that, the county didn't want me to work because I had a child under the age of 1. Then my current doctor does not want me to work because of the fibromyalgia. I've got the papers and the
I
documents.
mean, I'm just curious
stating
if you can't work, but you can have 2 young children, and you're living with somebody now full time, and you have 2 children with that person, and that
Yes.
person is employed?
Yes.
What kind of work does that person do?
He's a roofer.
It's a roofer. You live in your own home?
We rent a duplex, yes.
Okay. Can I see the bills, please?
We aren't married because of this. Because in the last 6 years, he's taken me to court 7 times over custody issues.
What does that have to
and
do with not being married?
My fiance is afraid that it's going to affect his income and his taxes.
Well, it may, but you can't choose not to work.
I'm not choosing
Yes,
not to work.
you choose not to work. You cannot choose not to work if you have a financial obligation for this child who is older.
He's
You had-
$11,979 in debt to child support. I'm not choosing not to work. I tried to work in October, from October 9th of
Miss
2000.
Gray, when you have 2 children and you live with a man as a family, and the reason you are not married is to avoid certain obligations.
I'm not avoiding obligations.
Yes, you are. If you're living with a man who is a roofer, who earns a substantial living, and you have 2 children with him, and you're getting welfare, that, according to me, is a scam. That's a scam.
The county knows about it, and
The county may know about it. The county may have its head up behind, but I don't.
Real cases, real people. Judge Judy. Richard Gray says ex-wife Bethany Gray refuses to pay for half their son's medical bills. Bethany says Richard refuses to use a doctor covered by her insurance.
Miss Gray, I've been in family court for a very, very long time. There is no question that if you married the man who is the father of your 2 young children, you would not be receiving welfare.
Every time
There
we
is
have
no
plans to
question.
get married, he has taken me to court. He has harassed me through court 7 times in 6 years, trying to get custody. And the judge in Kern County finally moved venue from Kern County to Placer County because he has done harassing me.
Miss Gray, that is
through
not
the
harassing.
courts.
If he is trying to exercise his right to get custody of his child for whatever reason, because he feels as if it's in the child's best interest, and it very well may be in the child's best interest. I don't know. I'm not hearing that case. That is not harassment. What I said to you was very clear and simple. You live with a man with whom you have 2 young children. You are not married, and there is no question that if you married this man with whom you are living, you would not be receiving welfare.
I'm
Period.
not concerned
End of
about
discussion.
the welfare. I've done it to keep the health insurance on my son because he doesn't pay child support. He doesn't carry health insurance.
Just one second. He doesn't pay child support to you, madam. He pays child support, whatever he pays, to the county, because the county is supporting you. Has nothing to do with you.
I have a check stub where they take my child support straight out of my payroll.
Whatever child support he pays goes directly to welfare. And I'm telling you that if you were, in fact, married to the man who is the father of your 2 children, you wouldn't be receiving support from Bird.
We haven't been able to get married because of this man.
Then you shouldn't be able to have 2 children with him. What do you mean you haven't been able to get married? That's ridiculous.
We can't afford it. Every time we have set a wedding date, he's taken me back to court. He does this on a regular basis.
Listen to me, Miss Gray. You're not following what I'm saying to you. You owe him for half of the unreimbursed medical bills for your son since 1998. Your pediatrician said to you, let the doctor who's been treating him continue to treat him. You said, okay, you are responsible under the judgment of your divorce for half of the unreimbursed bills. You're going to pay them. What are the bills in total? Come on.
They come to $723 for her part.
Judgment for the plaintiff in the amount of $723. That's all.
Parties are excused. You may step out.
The person can only milk the system for so long before they have to be paid for what they agreed in court.
I'm not on welfare because I'm lazy. My doctor said I cannot work.
She needs to pay her part. It took 2 of us to bring him here. It's going to take 2 of us to raise him.
I want him to leave me alone, visit with his son, and just leave me alone.
And now the next case.
All parties in the matter of Cantor versus Ward Andrew. Step forward, please.
31-year-old psychotherapist Lisa Cantor is suing 49-year-old telemarketer Aduni Andrew and 35-year-old homemaker Maureen Ward. Lisa says the defendant's sons threw rocks at her car.
Miss Ward and Miss Andrews, would you have a seat? I'd like your boys to come up here, please. Step up, gentlemen. What is your first name?
Chad.
And yours?
DeAndre.
How old are you, Chad?
13.
And you, DeAndre?
13.
You know who I am?
Yes.
Seen me a couple of times?
Yes.
So you know what to expect?
Yes.
You know that when you're here, we only want to hear about what actually happened. No half-truths, no quarter-truths, no nothing. Do you understand that?
Yes.
You boys were playing outside on September 14th?
Yes. Yes.
Who were you playing with?
It was just me and him.
The 2 of you. And I want you to start out by knowing that I believe that you're not bad boys. You're kids.
Yes.
Were you throwing rocks?
Yes. Yes.
What were you throwing rocks at?
Cars. Cars.
And you were both throwing rocks at cars, right?
Yes. Yes.
How long had you both been throwing rocks at cars?
3 minutes. Yeah, 3 minutes.
Where were you standing when you were throwing rocks at these cars?
The corner. It was on the corner of Halldale.
Were you throwing rocks that were little rocks or bigger rocks?
Well, they wasn't too big.
Show me with your hands.
About that big.
A decent-sized rock. Where did you get the rocks from?
On the ground.
Did you pick up some?
Yes.
You have pretty good aim?
No. No, not really.
How many cars do you think you hit in that 2 or 3 minute period?
Well, I know I hit 1.
What about you?
None.
Is that because you had bad aim?
Yes.
Wasn't for lack of trying, right?
Yes.
You were trying to hit the cars.
Yes.
Did you tell that to your mother?
Yes.
And you?
Yeah.
Told that to your mother?
Uh-huh.
Did you tell it to her right away when this lady came calling and said that one of you had thrown a rock at her car?
Yes. No, not me.
Who didn't fess up right away?
DeAndre.
When did you tell your mother that you were throwing rocks?
The same day.
That's not true.
What did she say to you?
She told me, did I throw the rock at Lisa's car? And I told her no.
That it wasn't the rock that you threw that hit the plaintiff's car. It was the rock that Chad threw that hit the plaintiff's car.
Yes.
But that was just lucky for you, right?
Yes.
Wasn't that you weren't aiming for the plaintiff's car, it's just that you didn't manage to hit it, right?
Yes.
Now let me ask you this question, DeAndre. I want you to think about this very carefully. If Chad wasn't with you on that day, do you think you would have been standing on the street and throwing rocks?
No.
What would you have been doing?
Probably home.
Now, I'm going to ask you the same question, Chad. If DeAndre wasn't with you, would you have been standing on the corner yourself throwing rocks?
No.
So the reason you were standing on the corner throwing rocks is because you were gathering strength from each other. It was the 2 of you doing it together.
Yes.
Having some fun together, right?
During school hours, to boot.
I'm making my point.
Okay.
And my point would be as follows to the mothers. Who is DeAndre's mother? This whole lawsuit is about whether or not DeAndre is as responsible as Chad is for the damage that was done to the plaintiff's car, whose car was hit by one of these rocks. You seem to think that because it was Chad's rock that hit the car, your son isn't responsible. Wrong. They are equally as responsible. It's just the luck of the draw that he didn't hit the car. That was a pretty dumb thing. You know that you could have really caused a terrible accident?
Yes.
So why did you do that? Were you bored?
No.
Well, what were you doing standing out there like two idiots, throwing rocks at cars?
Well, I was bored. I didn't have nothing to do.
Well, do you think if you were in school you wouldn't have been bored?
At the time, I was doing home study. Well, I still am.
Why were you doing home study? Did you get suspended?
Nah, not really. It's just
Well, not really is not an answer. Did you get suspended?
No.
How long have you been on home study?
A couple of months.
What about you?
No.
No what?
I wasn't bored.
Why weren't you in school?
Because I haven't had my papers yet.
What?
I haven't had my papers for Summit View, a private school I'm going to.
Can I see the bill for the car, please?
Sure.
It was like shooting fish in a barrel. $275. That's pretty cheap. One other thing, you have brothers and sisters?
3 brothers.
You have any younger brothers?
2.
And you?
I have 2 older sisters.
How old are they?
Well, my oldest sister is 30, and my youngest sister is 25.
Do they have children?
Yes.
Do you like their children?
Mm-hmm.
Your nieces and nephews?
Yeah.
You like them? So then let me ask you this. Let's say your little nieces and nephews are driving in a car with your sister, and somebody throws a rock at the car, and your sister swerves and hits a pole, and something happens bad to your nieces and nephews. How would you feel about the person who threw the rock?
I'll probably feel sad and...
Sad or angry?
Mad. Angry.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Why would you feel angry?
Well, because somebody threw a rock at the car, and she had an accident.
Next time either one of you contemplates doing something that's not only foolish, but can be dangerous, I want you to think about how you would feel if somebody that you loved was sitting in a car and was hurt because somebody else was just having some fun. Because although you are 13 now, you're going to be 16 and 17 and 18. You're going to be driving a car one day, and either you're going to be responsible and think about your actions, or you're going to be foolish and cause accidents. You always have to say, how would I feel if somebody did that to me or somebody I loved? You got it?
Yes.
Anything else you want to say?
That's it.
$137.50 for each. You have any questions about what I just did?
No.
Any questions?
No, I don't.
Perfect. Judgment for the plaintiff, that's all.
Parties are excused. You may step out. Arnold versus Cruz. Parties have been sworn in. Judge, you may be seated. Ma'am, have a seat, please.
Mr. and Mrs. O'Connell, the defendant is your former daughter-in-law.
Correct.
Married to your son, and they had 3 children, according to your complaint. Is
Yes,
that
ma'am.
right? You claim that you made a loan to her in order for her to be able to relocate, I assume after the divorce,
Yes, ma'am.
with 3 children.
Yes.
And she has not repaid that loan.
Yes.
And the defendant says that loan was no loan, but a gift. So we will get to that. And she has a cross complaint. I don't know what that's about, but I'm sure you'll explain it to me. Okay.
Your Honor, I'm sorry.
Just a second. I have questions. Okay. At the time that you advanced this money to the defendant, where were you living?
The state of Florida.
And where was the defendant living?
State of Maryland.
And tell me the circumstances surrounding her moving from Maryland to Florida.
Mainly, Your Honor, is that she had called me up on a Sunday afternoon, practically in tears. She didn't know what to do. She was being evicted from the apartment that she was living in because she didn't have the monies for the rent.
When was that?
The beginning of August of 2000.
Okay.
She pretty much begged for our help. She didn't know what to do. Her own mother wouldn't sign a lease for her to make sure that the monies for the rent were paid each month, because if Lisa failed to do that, the mother didn't want to be responsible.
How old were your 3 grandchildren at that time?
At the time...
4, 7, and 11.
And where was your son? In what state?
He was living in New York.
Okay, go ahead.
So she begged for our help. She didn't know what to do. She said she was going to have to go to a shelter or live in the car. She didn't have any money. Could we please help her? We discussed with her what we would be able to do.
Well, what did you say to her, and what did she say to you?
We told her that we would advance her the monies to move down here. I would have an apartment rented for her, have to pay first, last, and security. I would have utilities established if I needed to pay a deposit, but that I did expect the monies back from her. We were not in a position to give her a gift. Okay, this was a loan only. I would even have a job secured for her in Florida, which I did, and as long as the utilities and the rent and the apartment was in my name, that I would make sure I would pretty much manage the monies coming in through her salary as well as her child support.
Is this what you discussed with her?
Yes, ma'am, to make sure that everything was paid for.
And what about your son? How come she was penniless in Maryland?
Well, she wasn't penniless, Your Honor. He was paying child support.
How much?
$328 every other week.
So he was paying $150 a week for the support of 3 children.
That's what they deemed necessary for him to pay.
What kind of work does he do?
He's a police officer. Your Honor, if I may, he had offered to pay more, but based upon his salary at the time that he got divorced, he was only told that he needed to pay $154.
I'm just trying to figure out how come she had absolutely no money. Now I understand why she had no money. Is your family in Maryland?
No, it is not.
Where's your family?
My family was in New York.
When you were living with your husband, were you living in New York or in Maryland?
In New York with my ex-husband.
So what did you move to Maryland for?
Maryland, I moved because I have friends there. I just wanted to start over with the kids in a better area.
Had you discussed that with your husband before you moved to Maryland?
With my ex-husband, I had never any contact once he left with the other woman. He never came back.
So he left you in New York?
He left me with the 3 kids, no money, an eviction notice, all the power.
So that's why you moved to Maryland?
Right.
Okay. Go ahead. So then she comes down to Florida.
So we advanced her the monies to come down to Florida.
How much in total did you advance her?
I advanced her a total of almost $9,000, which $2,400 was paid back, and that's where it stopped.
When did she stop making payments to you?
She stopped making payments through her ex-husband's child support in November
What do you
of
mean
2000.
through her ex-husband's child support? What does that mean?
What she was doing is turning over one of the child support checks to me as repayment for what I was advancing her.
Now, when they came down to Florida, your daughter-in-law and the 3 children, did you see them regularly?
Oh, yes, we saw them regularly.
That was a good
They were
thing.
a good part of their life.
And they still see them regularly.
No.
Yes, they
No,
do.
ma'am, we don't.
Yes,
No, ma'am, we don't.
September 8th, they took them to the movies and out to eat. Right after that, the week after, September 15th, my father-in-law took my 3 children to the library and got them library cards. Okay, they do see them. They
They
do.
may not see them the way they like to see them, but it's good at least that
Yes,
they see them.
they do
That's a
see
good,
them.
That's a good thing.
After that was when I was served, and they have not seen the children, and that was their choice. Never mind. My children have nothing to do with what's going on between us.
Well, that's
the
very-
grandparents.
That's very good.
And they have not called to see them.
You should.
No, we did, Your Honor. That's not entirely
living in
true.
the house.
The last time I called her up, I said, I want to establish grandfather night again. I want to be able to take those kids out every Monday like I used to do before. And her word was, I'll think about it.
Your Honor, I'm being charged for every Monday that they took them
No,
out.
we're not, Your Honor. We
Yes,
are-
they are.
Just a second.
Yes,
What do you
I
mean-
am.
what do you mean you're
If
being
you
charged?
look at the suit that they're charging me, they're charging me for times where they took them out to eat, paper goods, a birthday cake, a birthday present they bought them.
Something must have happened.
They are
What-
jealous of my mom. I can tell you
What
the whole
happened?
story.
All right, because something must have happened to you, because here you have good people.
Yes, very good, and I love them to death for
Good
everything they
people
did.
who try to do the right thing. You call up and you say, this is not going well. I'm prepared to come to Florida, but I don't have any money. These don't look like really rich people, right?
Correct.
Right. So it's not as if the money was free-flowing. You did it because you wanted your only 3 grandchildren to have some sort of stability and security. So far they're okay. And for a long time, they were an integral part of the kids' lives. What I want to know is what happened to
tell you.
change that?
What happened was I came down here first with the children.
To Florida.
To Florida. And everything, like she said, was fine. There was never a verbal agreement of you have to pay me back. It was, we are going to help you because we know that you're having a tough time with no child support from my ex-husband. When I came down, they had everything prepared, which turned out to be a lie.
Real cases, real people. Judge Judy. Claire and Brian O'Connell are suing their former daughter-in-law, Lysandra Cruz, for a loan to move. The O'Connells say Lysandra is keeping them from seeing their grandchildren.
Go ahead. The apartment that supposedly I have proof here that I paid the security and I paid the first month October rent and every rent after that. Once I got here, I took over all the bills, paying them, which I have every receipt and every proof that I have paid every single bill that was under her name.
Were you working?
Yes.
Was it a job that your mother-in-law had found for you?
Yes.
What kind of job?
It is a computer analyst for a bank.
Great.
Yeah.
And who takes care of the children? Who was
They
taking
go
care
to
of
the
children?
YMCA after-school program.
Wonderful. Go ahead.
Okay. So everything was going okay. What started happening was she started meeting me every payday after work and made sure that I went to the bank with her and everything was paid like a little child. It was like a controlling thing started happening.
What was paid?
The phone bill, the light bill, the rent, everything, which I kept saying to her, I can do on my own. I am not a child. I know how to do this. She had the key to the house. She would come into the apartment while I was sleeping. She would come in while I was at work because neighbors would tell me, what was your mother-in-law doing in your apartment while you're working? It started getting very scary. I started calling my mother and telling her, Ma, this is really bad. They have total control of me. I cannot take this. I need help. The whole thing started was she wanted the family together in Florida because they wanted to grow up with the grandchildren.
I think that's
and
great.
everybody be together. That's what happened. Once my mother came down to Florida, she was going to stay with me until she found an apartment and a job. Well, this is where everything happened, where she got very jealous. My mother-in-law, Claire, wanted me to charge my mother $300 a week for my mom to stay with me, which I refused. I said, this is my mother. I cannot charge my mother for staying with me. There is absolutely no way I could do it. She came to the house, confronted me in front of my mom, and said, speak up now, wanted me to tell my mother that she had to pay me to stay, plus the money was going to go to her, not me, even though I was paying the rent.
You mean to pay off this loan?
Supposedly what I owed her. It started all out of jealousy, ma'am. All out of jealousy, Your Honor. And it shouldn't have been this way because I love them equally.
Oh, all terrible. All very sad.
Mm-hmm.
Are you working?
Yes, I am.
You live with your daughter and your 3 grandchildren, or do you have your own place?
I have my own place,
Now.
and now she's living with me. And the
Stand
2
up.
children. Sorry.
So you left the apartment that your mother-in-law
I was
originally
thrown
found,
out.
and you moved into a new place with your mom.
I was thrown
When did
out.
you do that?
We left the
In
apartment
August.
in August. Mm-hmm.
Sounds to me like you are a very responsible,
Mm-hmm.
caring gal,
Very.
and hopefully not let this interfere with your children having wonderful relationships with both of their sets of grandparents. So that's wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
And Mr. and Mrs. O'Connell, I think that you're lovely people.
Yes, but it's not entirely true what she says,
It's
Your
not
Honor.
true what she says, Your Honor.
Listen to me.
Okay.
Miss Cruz, by her own statements, doesn't deny that she owes you some more money, that this was not a gift. Because if she was paying you back, then it's clear to me that it was the understanding between the two of you that the money that you advanced her would be returned when she could.
Right.
It's one of those unusual cases where you all sound like absolutely lovely people, and I'm not going to look at all of your bills and everything else, and I'm going to tell you why, Mr. and Mrs. O'Connell, because I don't want you to say or do anything that will permanently alter the relationship that you have with your daughter-in-law. And you really have to make an arrangement so that they can see the kids
They
sort of
do.
regularly,
No.
and shouldn't
No.
allow this thing
You know,
here.
they do. What I am mostly afraid of, the last time they took my children, my daughter Jessica came back hysterical crying because as kids they do ask, Grandma, Grandpa, can you buy me this, can you buy me that? She asked them to buy her a sweater. Claire said, I will not buy you a sweater because your mother gets child support. Now, how can you tell a child that? My daughter came back hysterical crying. I am totally afraid for them to go with them.
They're not going to say that anymore. If they said it, maybe they need a reality check.
Your Honor, I said, excuse me, Jesse, I love you very much, but Grandma is all spent out, okay? All these times when Daddy wasn't sending the checks, Grandpa and I were paying for everything. I said, we don't have
How
any
old is
more
this
money.
child? How
She's
old
8
is-
years old. And I said, Jesse, I said, now your mommy is getting all of your daddy's child support,
Which
the
I am
current
not.
plus the back child support. I wish I could,
Miss
Jesse.
O'Connell, that is not a discussion that you have with an 8-year-old. Children should never, ever be involved with the finances in a family. Children, all they hear is, there's friction in my family, it's all over money,
Children
my
should
daddy.
never be heard then. The children.
Right. You're absolutely right. So even though you started out with, I love you very much, you did something very hurtful. Don't show me anything yet.
May I say one thing, Your Honor?
I'm not finished.
I'm sorry.
So sometimes adults don't always do the right thing either.
This is what I'm saying. I'm very afraid.
They're not going to do it anymore. Promise?
Promise.
Promise?
Definitely promise, Your Honor.
Promise.
I love them to death. I love my
Promise.
grandchildren so much.
Maybe they didn't realize that it was hurtful to her, but they really have to have sort of a regular.
Yes.
You have any
I
problem
agree.
with that?
I know. I totally agree. I never did have a problem. They've always had the right to see, like I said, the kids. I never put the kids in the middle.
Good.
My understanding is that the children are not living with Lisa's mother any
They're
longer.
living with my mother.
Well, do you live with your mother?
Yes.
What makes you think not?
My son, when he came down for a visit, he went over and says that Lisa is getting another apartment somewhere. She's been saving the child support money to get an apartment.
Listen to me. There ain't that much to save.
Thank you.
She's not becoming rich
No one
on the
said she's
amount of
becoming
child
rich.
support that your son is sending to her. Believe me. Listen to me, folks. These children are the innocents. And whatever other agendas everybody has, you have to make sure that the innocents aren't made to feel any worse. Here, they had a wonderful relationship with you. All of a sudden, that's taken away from them because of a dispute amongst adults having nothing to do with them. So these children, if you want them to grow up emotionally secure, you better stop the bickering. Now, Miss Cruz, you owe the O'Connells some money, okay? Because I find that this was not a gift, but it was a loan that they made to you as you could repay them. Now I'm going to hear your counterclaim. Let me hear it.
Your Honor, first of all, I gave in my car when I first moved to Florida in order to get another car. Because of my divorce with my ex-husband and loans that he had, my credit history is no good. They, in turn, say, we will put the car under our name and you make all the payments. Well, Your Honor, that's exactly what I did. Now, when they turned around and got angry with my mom for the jealousy bit with the grandma thing, they went and they stole the car. We went outside and the car was gone.
Okay, you took it back. When did you take it back?
Okay, we took it back August 1st of this year, and the reason that we took it back, Your Honor, is because she had said to my husband, I don't want anything to do with you, I'm not paying you any more monies, leave me alone, don't have anything to do with me.
So you acknowledge that she had made all the payments on this car?
All the payments except for one, Your
No,
Honor.
every
She
single
made all the
For-
payments except for one.
For virtually all the payments on this car. Is that right?
Correct.
So the reason you took it back is because she said to you, I'm not giving you any more money.
Exactly.
What did you do with the car?
We have it. We're using it.
Did that leave her without a car?
Yes, it did leave her without a car.
Why would you do that?
Because she said to me she's not giving us any more money, she's not making any more payments to us.
So you took back the car?
Yes.
As payment for this loan?
No, Your Honor.
Separate.
No,
Oh.
Your Honor, it's separate.
No, Your
Okay.
Honor, they
No,
Your Honor.
no, it's not separate.
Yes, it is, Your Honor. She had abused privileges that I gave her. She was ruining my credit with
Never.
FPL. She
Your
ruined,
Honor, I have
she
all-
ruined
No,
my
I'm
credit.
talking about car.
Okay.
Car.
Nope.
Car. How much did you invest in the car in total?
$3,000, Your Honor. And
No,
every
Your
single
Honor,
thing
that's
is
not
here.
true.
Yes,
That's
it
not
is.
true, Your Honor.
Every money order's here. You can
Your
count
Honor,
it
that's not
yourself.
true, Your Honor.
You can count it yourself, Your Honor.
That's not true.
Can
I
Well,
go
how
with
much?
Your
Let me
Honor?
ask you this question: how much money do you say that she has paid into the car?
Okay, $231 for 9 payments. So she used the car in June and hasn't paid me
Just-
money
you
for
put
that.
that money.
No. Don't fight, please. I didn't want there to be any fighting. You also include your insurance in
Yes,
that bill.
that's
I'm just
not
talking about the car payments.
And that's not counting my car that I gave in, the 1994 Taurus.
And how much did you get for that?
$400 they put towards the bill of the car.
Okay. So all this started a whole bunch of problems. All started because you say your mother-in-law, they got jealous. She wanted you to charge your mother rent in order to pay her back faster. You said no. They got annoyed. To make a long story short, you've paid in $2,079 on the car. In addition, $400 you got as a trade-in for your old car. You had the use of this car, but you took this car back sort of in partial payment of whatever debt she owed you. So I'm deducting that from the cost of the $5,000. And I want to tell you something else. I think that you're not being terribly smart, the O'Connells. If Miss Cruz is saying what she means, which is she cares for you both, and that she's really very sorry for all of these bad things that happened between the two of you, and these are your only 3 grandchildren, I would, as my grandson would say, suck it up. Because I think you're making a big mistake for taking this any further. In any event, I find that she does not owe you the $5,000 that you're requesting. I am doing a set-off with the counterclaim. Judgment for the plaintiff in the amount of $2,571. That is it.
We're also suing for our computer, Your Honor, which she has that we want back.
They gave
Just
that
a
to their
second.
grandson.
Goodbye.
Judge, this is case number 31 on the calendar in the matter of Heath versus Marple. Parties have been sworn in, Judge. You may be seated. Folks, have seats, please.
You've had a lot of years of practice.
Yeah.
Ms. Heath, it is your claim that the defendant at some sort of a water party sexually assaulted you while you were riding with him on one of those watercrafts called a sea-doo.
Yes, Your Honor.
When do you allege this happened?
It was August 19th, about 4:30, 5 o'clock in the afternoon.
Tell me about the party.
It was a going-away party for one of my husband's coworkers.
It was a going-away party. What kind of a party was it?
A beach party barbecue.
Was it on a lake?
It was on the river, the Colorado River, by the casinos of Laughlin.
Did you know the defendant before the party?
Vaguely. I met him one time outside my garage. And then another
And he's a
time.
co-worker of your husband's?
Yes, Your Honor.
How long have they been working together?
Approximately 4 months prior to this.
And what time did you arrive at the party?
About 3:30.
And tell me, what precipitated your going for a ride with the defendant on this sea-doo?
Well, he offered to take me for a ride, and I asked my husband. He said it was fine.
Well, he offered, but he must have known that you wanted to go for a ride.
Well, later I found out that my husband had asked him to take me for a ride, Your Honor.
Is that correct?
Yes, it is.
Okay, about what time was that?
That was approximately 4:30, 5 o'clock.
And you said okay?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. So you both got on the sea-doo. Who was in the front?
He was driving, I was the passenger.
Okay. Where did you go?
Well, I expected to go just, down a ways and turn around and come back. And he kept attempting to pull off to the side, and just shored the sea-doo. And he finally did, approximately 3 miles later, under the Laughlin Bullhead Sid Bridge. And then he shored it, and I thought he was doing, what we do when we have people on our boat, just letting the passenger cool off. And then he began speaking highly of my husband, that he's a great teacher, he's learned a lot from him, that he was an awesome man and really a good friend to him. And then I said, we've been gone a long time, I think it's time that we go back. And he said, oh, no, but don't you want to drive back? And I said, no, I don't, because I have very sore area here, and I didn't want the handlebars in front of me, Your Honor. And he insisted.
When you say he insisted, he said, no, why don't you drive?
No, he said, I want you to drive back. Why don't you just get on there and drive back? And I said, fine, I'm driving back, let's go.
Okay. So?
And so we got just a little ways under the bridge. Before we took off, he put his hands on my thighs, Your Honor, here, instead of around my vest. And I thought that maybe that's just the way he wanted to hold on. But before we got under the bridge, he pulled his hands up higher into my bathing suit. And I turned to him and I said, what the F are you doing? And he had dead eyes, Your Honor. He didn't hear me. He wasn't there. And so I hit the wake of the ferry and I threw him in the water. But the sea-doo wouldn't go because he had the plug on his vest. And then he got back on the sea-doo, only got it started again. And just a few minutes later, he put his hands back inside me. And here's my bathing suit. And he, with his right hand, he forced himself inside me. And the harder we hit the bumps, the harder I was driving. He kept pushing himself under my butt. And I kept continuing to scream at him, what the hell are you doing? Knock that off. And then he fell over my back. And I looked
up ahead and I saw a man standing on the dock, and I thought it was my husband, but it wasn't, Your Honor. It was the supervisor. And he helped me. And as soon as he put his hands on me, I just got out of the water. And I turned around and I looked at my husband and the man that was leaving. It was a go-away party. And they were having such a good time that I just crawled inside myself. And I just swam in the river.
When, for the first time, did you report this incident?
I reported it to my husband Saturday night on the way going home.
Did you contact the police?
Yes, ma'am.
When?
On the 23rd.
Why did you wait 3 days?
Here's a police report.
Why did you wait 3 days?
I don't know, ma'am.
How long did you stay at the party after you got off the Sea-Doo?
Approximately 2.5 hours.
Why did you stay at the party 2.5 hours?
Because my husband was having such a good time, I didn't want to ruin his good time. I'd also like to offer to the court detective statement.
I'd like to see that too.
And my therapist's statement and my chiropractor's statement for the damage to my neck.
The police department took your bathing suit. Did they return it to you?
Yes, ma'am.
Did they perform any tests on it?
Yes, Your Honor. They said it was inconclusive because of being in the river and the swimming pool. I have it right here, Your Honor.
I don't have to see it. This report says that you didn't tell your husband on the way home. This report says that you told your mother when you got home and eventually told your husband.
No, that's wrong, Your Honor. I did tell my husband, and then when he went to bed, I went in and woke up my mother, and I told my mother, and I showed her the marks and the bruises that he left on me.
Were there marks and bruises on you?
Yes, ma'am.
Where were the marks?
On my genital area.
Would you step up, please? Tell me your last name.
Rose.
Miss Rose, do you live with your daughter and son-in-law?
Yes, I do.
Do you remember that evening of the 19th of August?
Yes, I do.
Can you tell me what you recall of the conversation you had with your daughter?
After she told me what happened, I asked her, let's go in and let me look. I can only look and tell you what I think.
What do you mean you only could tell her what you think?
You know, how it looked and everything, because I'm not a doctor. And
Did she complain of any discomfort?
Yes, she did.
What did she say to you about the discomfort?
That it was burning and it was bleeding all around.
All around?
Yes.
So what did you do?
About 6 inches from her hip down, it looked like somebody had ground up meat. All red and dark and black.
Did you see any marks in her vaginal area?
Yes. It was red. It was definitely red. The whole thing was red. Both
Okay.
sides and down.
Have a seat.
Real cases, real people. Judge Judy. Andy Heath says she was sexually assaulted by her husband's former co-worker, S. Lyle Marple. Andy says the attack occurred while S. Lyle was giving her a ride on his jet ski.
All right, Mr. Marple, tell me about the ride that you and Miss Heath took.
Well, the party started like at 3 o'clock. At about 3:10, we went down to the pool area, and I started getting stuff out for the party. And then a few minutes later, her husband is yelling for me to give her a ride because she's down on the dock and she won't leave the dock until somebody gives her a ride on the Sea-Doo. So I went up and got the jackets, went down, gave her one. We put them on. We got on the Sea-Doo. When she first got on, she grabbed a hold of my shoulders. Then she grabbed my waist, and we took off up the river. Then her hands were down on my thighs. First, she just wanted to ride. Then when she got on it, she wanted to drive it. So I pulled into the beach. She got off. She jumped in the water, cooled down, and we sat, and she talked for a while, talking about her husband and stuff. And then she wanted to ride the jet ski, so I let her ride. She got on. I got on behind her. And she took off wide open. I told her to keep it slow, you know. And then she just zigzagged down through the water.
At some point, did you fall off?
No.
At no point you fell off the Sea-Doo?
No. As we were going down, she hit a big wave, and we jumped up in the air, which made the Sea-Doo unplug, and we came back down on the Sea-Doo.
But you remained on it?
Oh, yeah. If I would have fell off, it's hard to get back on.
You say he fell off?
Yes, Your Honor.
How did he get back on?
Very easily. He just crawled up on the back of it and got on the seat, plugged it in, started it up.
All right. Got back to the party, and the plaintiff stayed at the party for a period of about 2.5 hours.
Yes, Your Honor.
Is that right?
Yes. We pulled in, and that's when I helped her guide it back up to the dock because I didn't want her to run into the dock and hit the kill switch so we could get off.
There was another young woman who you also gave a ride to on your Sea-Doo.
Yes. Want to ride?
How old is she?
13.
Did she take control of the Sea-Doo at any time?
Yes.
She wanted to drive also.
That's what everybody wants to do. Everybody wants to ride on it, and then they want to drive it.
When you gave your ride, were your hands on her thighs or around her waist?
They were right below the vest, which had been right above her thighs, and on front of her, on her legs.
On her
Because when they
leg.
take off, you got to grab on because there's nothing to hold on to. There's no straps there to hold on to, and everything's wet. When you take off fast.
We live along, excuse me.
I didn't ask anything.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Were you a witness to any of this?
Yes, I was.
Oh, then I'll hear you. Step up. Tell me your last name.
Harold Tobin.
Do you work with these gentlemen?
I worked with him formerly, and then he moved on, and so we became friends, and
So
he
what-
invited me to a party.
So tell me what you witnessed.
Well, I was going to comment on Sea-Doos. We live on the river. To grab underneath the jacket to help hold on, or there's straps across the jacket for a vest is another hold-on point. So that's a common place to hold on.
So you hold
But,
on to the vest.
Right. You grab your hands
Listen to
underneath
just
the
listen to me.
vest.
You hold on to the vest,
Yes.
not to somebody's thighs,
But understand, yes, I agree.
right? Thank you. Sit down. I live on a lake too. I see Sea-Doos all the time. You ever been on a Sea-Doo?
No, ma'am.
Me neither. Ever seen them?
I've seen them.
Ever had a desire to go on one?
Negative.
Me neither. Let me ask you this question, Mr. Marple. Would it surprise you if I told you that this 13-year-old girl that you gave a ride to had a measure of discomfort at the way you were holding her during the time that she was riding the Sea-Doo when she was driving it?
Probably at first, because when you take off, everybody about falls off.
I'm not
So I
talking about
think
that
you're
kind of
scared.
discomfort. I'm talking about the kind of discomfort that comes from the way you were holding on to her on her thighs instead of holding on to the jacket.
No. If you hold up high, they're controlling you, pushing it back and forth. You hold down here, you're more stable.
He does.
No.
He does. He grabs the jacket or under the jacket. Life jackets come waist high. So you either grab underneath or you grab around if somebody is thin enough. But I never heard of grabbing hold of somebody's thighs to hold on.
If a life
Or
jacket's
legs or
on,
upper thighs, because that's what you call the area where you say put at your waist, but you put it at your waist, your fingers are extended, that could slip a little bit. That slips a little bit in a place where it's not supposed to be. Mr. Marple, did you take a polygraph test?
yes.
Did you get the results of the polygraph test?
No, they didn't give me any of it. They didn't give me any tapes, and they didn't give me all the polygraph tests.
Did you ever tell anybody that you passed the polygraph test?
Yes.
Were you ever told that you passed the polygraph test?
No, I just figured I'd pass the polygraph test.
Well, according to the Bullhead City Police Department, the results of the test shows that you were deceptive in your responses, which would mean inconclusive. Did you take one?
No, Your Honor.
Why not?
It's against medical orders.
Against whose medical orders?
My therapist.
Why would your therapist tell you not to take a polygraph test?
I volunteered, Your Honor.
So I don't understand why you didn't take one.
Because my doctor told me that it was against my best interest because I was heavily sedated and having a hard time dealing with this.
Can you think of any reason whatsoever that the plaintiff would make up a story about having been sexually assaulted by you?
I believe she was miserable living in Bullhead City. She wanted to move, so she wasn't happy. She couldn't keep a job. They weren't getting along good at home.
Who told you all of these things?
Just from talking to people. Talking
Was
to her.
that before or after this incident?
This was before.
So before this incident, you knew all these things about her, that she was miserable living in Bullhead City,
Yeah.
that she was unhappy at home?
Yes.
So you think that the response to that was claiming that she had been sexually assaulted by you?
That, and she had nothing to lose and everything to gain.
Like what?
She had money, because she was going to sue. She had more drugs, because she could go to the doctor and complain. So she had the sympathy of everybody that was kind of disgusted with her, and now they were falling over backwards, feeling sorry for her about this thing that happened, which didn't happen. And
Excuse
then,
me, Your Honor, that's incorrect.
What's incorrect, Miss Heath?
That I have people crawling all over me. I can't even stand having people
Would
around
you step
me.
up, please? Yes. Mr. Heath, I want you to tell me about exactly when your wife told you about what happened on the Sea-Doo.
I was about halfway home from the party.
And what did she say?
She said that she didn't want me to be upset, but that I had hurt her while she was on the Sea-Doo. And I asked her if she could be more specific, and she pretty much didn't want to tell me about the exact extent of it. It took her about 3 months of therapy and everything before she wanted me to know the exact specifics.
So she didn't actually tell you what happened.
She told me that he had fondled her and groped her.
When did she tell that to you?
That night.
That night?
Mm-hmm. I tried to urge her to go to the hospital, and she didn't want anything to do with that. She just wanted to go straight home. And I thought she was like in shock, so I tried to get her to go willingly to the hospital. And
How long have you been married?
I've been married for 10 years. Been together for 12.
Steve, I want you to listen very carefully to my question, sir. Has your wife ever made an allegation of sex abuse against anyone else?
No, Your Honor.
Has she ever claimed that anyone who you worked with or any social friend made any untoward advances towards her?
No, Your Honor.
After she told you about this incident, the next day, what did you do?
I pretty much was trying to talk to her about it, and she kept crying hysterically, and she wouldn't really tell me any of the specifics of exactly, what had happened. She had me go to a visit with her psychologist, and that is when together the three of us sat down, and that's when she told me there.
When was that visit with the psychologist?
It's been a couple of months ago.
Was it shortly after the incident?
No, it's about 3 months.
After the incident?
Yes, ma'am.
Had your wife been seeing this psychologist before?
Never.
Was your wife ever in psychiatric or psychological treatment before this incident?
Never.
Was your wife taking any sort of medication, antidepressants, prior to this incident?
No, Your Honor.
Your Honor, I'd like to make a statement, tell what I saw, and then my wife needs to make a statement.
Well, I would like to hear what somebody witnessed. You didn't indicate that you witnessed anything.
I witnessed a lot.
Well, let me hear what you witnessed, sir. I'm anxious to hear what you witnessed. Go ahead.
I was one of the first guests to arrive to the party. I met these people at the pool. I introduced my wife to them. I recall the incident where her husband was yelling up to Stanley about giving his wife a ride and that she went off for the ride. I remember her coming back, but I remember her being happy when the vest saying that they hit a hard wake and it unplugged and it came off. We have a videotape showing that she had a wonderful time through the whole party. She left late into the night, and I was surprised because she got in an argument with another co-worker with these gentlemen about an incident said, and I was just surprised how angry she was on that. And the guy was holding his little kid, and after they left, I was asking him what was said, and it was something just minute, but I was so shocked how angry she was. And this was into the night.
Tell me what it was.
It was just her. Okay, what it was is that what the guy told me, he was holding his kid, that when he was bent over picking up something or something bent over, the guy said his boss sees him in that position all the time. And then she got angry about it.
So somebody made a sexual innuendo at the party about her husband.
Right.
And she became angry, and in your judgment, her anger went over the top at that point.
But for just that, while after the ride, she was calm and laughing, and
okay,
she
you
was
said you had a video. I'll look at the video. You have it?
Yes, we do.
Let me see it.
Heath claims she was sexually assaulted by the defendant, S. Lyle Marple, while riding with him on his jet ski.
Before we took off, he put his hands on my thighs, and I thought that maybe that's just the way he wanted to hold on. But he pulled his hands up higher into my bathing suit, and he forced himself inside me.
The defendant denies the plaintiff's allegations.
She had nothing to lose and everything to gain.
Like what?
Money, because she was going to sue. More drugs, because she could go to the doctor. So she had the sympathy of everybody feeling sorry for her about this thing that happened, which didn't happen.
And his witness thinks he has the proof.
We have a videotape showing that she had a wonderful time through the whole party.
Now, the conclusion.
I want to see the video. You have it?
Yes, we do.
Let me see it.
I can explain scenes that I see.
Are there scenes of the plaintiff?
Yes.
After this incident?
Yes.
All right, let me see after the ride.
You're doing great.
Oh, hi.
Oh, hi. Come on, pose a little bit.
This is good music, Ron.
Oh, you like that, huh? Yeah. Little third world. It's the most beer I've ever seen Stanley drink. How you doing, Stan? You having a good
Is this
time at the
before
party?
or after the ride?
This is after the ride. If you can see Stanley where he had his vest on, his T-shirt's still wet. It's dry where the vest covers his shirt. But this is after the
Now,
ride.
is that, just a second, is that Stanley dancing around?
That's Stanley dancing around.
All right, that's Stanley dancing.
And that was the defendant.
Was that her dancing?
She's floating in and out.
I'm talking to my husband, Your Honor.
Come on, Pam, do it.
If you notice what's going in the background, Your Honor, this gentleman's wife was attempting.
You didn't do it. That, you know? Pam almost pulled Stan's pants down, but she chickened out at the last minute.
Okay. Mr. Heath, it did appear that your wife was not, at least overtly, traumatized. This was after the incident.
Yes,
I believe she was in shock, Your Honor.
You're not an expert.
That's true.
You are not a psychiatric expert.
That's true, Your Honor. I've been with my wife for 12 years, and I know her very well. And I know the difference of how she was feeling before and after the ride.
Well, you couldn't tell that she was feeling badly afterwards.
I could tell that the people that we normally hang out with, she totally avoided.
You couldn't tell from looking at that your wife had just suffered a traumatic event.
That's true.
Is that a fair statement?
Yes, it is.
I didn't want him to know, Your Honor.
It may be, but you have the possibility of just withdrawing at the party and sitting down, sitting, having a drink, not saying anything, but you were participating at the party at this.
Flying all over the place.
You were
Your
flying
Honor.
all over the place. Had you had anything to drink before you went on the Sea-Doo?
Yes, Your Honor.
What did you have to drink?
Snow Creek wine.
What is that?
It's like a Boone's Farm. And I was in the pool so much, I just come back and put ice in it.
Okay, so how many drinks did you have?
One. And also this gentleman's wife and I went to the store to buy a bottle of Malibu rum. And I had a little bit of Malibu rum in with that, but then again, I just kept putting ice in it. I'm not a drinker, Your Honor.
Okay, and what about you, sir? How much did you have to drink?
I had like a beer or two, and then later on I had a few more beers.
Did you drink anything other than beer?
No.
Anything else you want to say?
Yeah, but at the end of the party, it was strange because I've really had an enjoyable time with these people. And at the end, after it was that diffusing, she gave me a kiss, my wife a kiss, Stanley a kiss. My wife she spent 80% of the time with this lady in the pool, and it's on the tape. You see them that they're together all the time. My wife has things to say.
I'd like to
It
hear.
also says in here that she needed to be on medication for the rest of her life. And
Sit down.
all right, but Pam.
Yes.
I did spend most of the time at the party with Andy, and we did have a really good time. We drank quite a bit. The bottle of Malibu rum that she did bring, I had one glass, and I know that it was empty at the end of the party.
That's
and I'll admit that we were both drunk at the party. When she left, she was very drunk. Her whole demeanor throughout the party with her, she didn't act like anybody that had anything happen to them. I am an RN, I work in an emergency room, and I do take care of women who are sexually assaulted or raped.
Did you see any marks or bruises on the plaintiff?
No, I never saw any marks or bruises, and also on the video, I never noted any marks or bruises on her.
Anything else you want to tell me?
Yes, one other thing. Stanley did obtain her medical records, and it does show that she has been on psychiatric drugs and sedatives for years before this incident. Also has a history of psychiatric problems. It's right there on the paperwork.
What do you take Paxil for?
I was taking Paxil because my mother had 29 surgeries in less than a year.
Well, Paxil is a psychiatric drug. You know that?
Yes, sir.
Pay attention.
Yes, ma'am.
When did you start to take Paxil?
About 3 years ago.
So your answer to me that you were not taking any medication, listen to me. Your husband's answer.
Yes, ma'am.
So you telling me that your husband didn't know that you were taking Paxil?
Yes, he did, ma'am.
I don't even know what Paxil is for.
Lorazepam, what do you take that for?
For sleeping. Not any longer.
But you did then?
Yes, ma'am.
When was your last prescription?
Approximately a year ago.
This happened on the 19th of August, 2000?
Yes, Your Honor.
Did you go to the doctor on the 2nd of August?
I don't recall, Your Honor.
Did you complain to the doctor at that point that you had a rash on your back, some on your legs, and also in the vaginal area?
No, not in the vaginal area. I don't remember that. I do remember
That's what the doctor reports.
Okay, well then
Miss
that is
Heath.
possible, Your Honor.
That was on the 2nd. He increased your Paxil to 40 milligrams, is that right?
I believe so, yes, Your Honor.
You also called July 27th, indicating that you were going out of town to take care of your brother and you'll run out of your Paxil. And when they called to check at the pharmacy, they indicate that you had 4 refills for Walgreens.
Yes, Your Honor.
So you had enough.
Yes, Your Honor.
You were also taking sleeping pills before.
Yes, Your Honor.
At some point, did the doctor tell you that they wanted to wean you off these sleeping pills?
I wanted to wean it off.
Doctor reported sometime prior to this that you wanted some additional medication, and the doctor explained that that would be a fraud. Explained to patient that she'll need to be seen before we can refill the lorazepam. Patient states she'll see what she can do to get in.
Yes, Your Honor.
Doctor reports that you started to take some medication due to an attempted suicide in September of 1999, owing to stress. Did you attempt suicide in 1999?
No, Your Honor. That was
Right.
September of 2000, Your Honor.
September of 1999
No, Your Honor.
is what this report indicates. You take a lot of Paxil and a lot of the other medication, according to this report.
Not anymore, Your Honor.
Why?
I'm on different medication.
What kind of medication are you on?
I'm on trazodone and Effexor. Trazodone is for sleep, Effexor is for antidepressant.
But that wasn't as a result of
And
this
Xanax.
incident.
Yes, Your
That-
Honor.
Real cases, real people. Judge Judy. Andy Heath says former friend S. Lyle Marble sexually assaulted her at a party. S. Lyle says Andy is lying.
There's a lot of information here. Is there anything else that you want me to read?
My answer to her complaint.
Well, that's self-serving, sir. Your answer is self-serving.
Your Honor, may I make a
Yes.
statement? Her and I did become very good friends. We have a friend in common. She made the interest in the fact that she enjoyed drinking Malibu rum, as did I. The Malibu rum was not empty, Your Honor. I still have it in my refrigerator.
Whether
as
it
of
was
this
or whether it was not, madam, are you given specific instructions when you take Paxil with regard to any alcohol?
day. Yes, Your Honor.
Are you allowed to have any alcohol if you are taking medication?
No, and I drink wine.
You are not supposed to have any alcohol if you are taking Paxil. Is that right?
Yes.
And you were, in fact, taking Paxil, as well as other medication, on this day.
But that is not instructed on the Paxil bottle.
Miss Heath.
It is on Effexor.
Miss Heath, one of the problems is that when I asked that specific question before, whether there was ever any indication that you had a problem before this, your husband said never a problem, you don't take any medication, there was never any psychotropic medication, nothing. And so that would lend certain credibility to your statements that as a result of this incident, you became so traumatized that you now have stress, can't sleep, you're on medication. You know, all that
Nightmares.
goes together. But all that happened before. Your husband was not honest with me when he...
Your Honor, I
Mr.
didn't know.
Heath,
I'm not trying to be misleading.
well, you were misleading to me. Your wife has been on heavy-duty medication for a long time. You know, this is a very, very difficult matter for anybody to handle in a relatively short period of time. There is no medical evidence of sexual assault. So I have to listen to the two testimonies. And I have to find to my satisfaction, by a preponderance of the evidence, that this did in fact occur. My initial reaction from hearing your story was that maybe everybody's a little drunk and he got a little out of hand. That pay careful attention to me. Don't interrupt me. That's why you ask questions, because before you find somebody, in effect, guilty of this kind of horrific experience, you have to be really satisfied. And as a judge and as a woman, I find that this kind of experience can be, and to most women would be, very traumatic. The response to that trauma would be to say to your husband, get your bathing suit, we're leaving. And then I see a tape, Miss Heath, of you apparently partying afterwards. I would have to have some pretty substantial psychiatric testimony from a treating therapist that would indicate to me that due to this kind of stress, you may have been suffering a post-traumatic stress even during this period of time, which so altered your mood that would permit a video to be taken of you seemingly laughing and having a good time, encouraging your husband to dance. But I don't have that. Listen to me. I don't have that expert testimony.
Yes, ma'am, you do.
No, I don't.
Yes, you do.
As You're not
Excuse
paying
me?
attention.
I'm sorry.
I don't have what your therapist says happens here because I cannot examine your therapist.
Yes, ma'am.
I do not take this as fact.
Yes,
What
ma'am.
I take as fact are your medical records that indicate that you were prescribed over a long period of time serious medication. You complained for a long period of time that as a result of stress you couldn't sleep. You asked the doctor on more than one occasion to provide more medication than the doctor would provide because he says you already have enough. You got that prescription filled 2 days ago. I'm not going to refill it again. That's objective data from the medical records. The statement from your therapist, Ms. Heath, is self-serving, and without that therapist here, I have a difficult time making a judgment, quite frankly, viewing the tape, looking at these medical records, listening to your husband, plus the fact that you decided, whether on advice of your therapist or not to take a polygraph test, despite the fact that he took one. And his polygraph test did not vindicate him, according to the detective's report, because I don't have the polygraph here either. It didn't say you did it. It didn't say you didn't do it. It said some of your answers were deceptive. But it didn't even say that you had declined to take a polygraph test.
She didn't decline. She offered to.
She didn't take it.
Right.
Because if she had taken it, they would have said she took it.
I have something very important to address to you.
Go ahead.
This tape that they have shown was before the ride, Your Honor, not after the ride.
Really?
Yes, ma'am.
Go ahead.
After the ride, I went over to make sure that I could hold myself together. And I gave him 5. I said, give me 5 to make sure I could hold myself together. And then he was nowhere around me until I was ready to leave, and he was sitting in my seat.
It was after the ride. In fact, if you look at the whole tape, there are parts in there where you can tell. At one point, he asked what time it was. It was like 6:30. You can kind of tell throughout the tape, you know, where he went and got his jet ski and took it back, and especially with him being wet. He only
There's a
went out in
pool
the
right
water.
there.
He never went in the pool once. He was only in the water twice. When she got back, we jumped in the water a couple times after that. She was having so much fun. We ran on the dock.
He walked
We
right through the
jumped
grate
off.
next to where I was.
Mr. Heath.
We jumped off the dock and swam to the shore. We were having a great time.
Before the ride?
No, that was after the ride. And if she was assaulted, why would she let a little 13-year-old girl go on the boat right after
No,
him?
don't ask them a question.
May I answer that?
No.
Your Honor.
Accusing, listen to me. Accusing someone of what I consider a vicious attack is serious business.
Yes, it is.
And I have to be totally satisfied
Yes.
that this incident occurred as you indicate.
Yes, ma'am.
Because we're not talking about the money judgment that you're requesting so much,
No, ma'am.
but we're talking about making a statement publicly that this man violated you.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. In order for me to do that, I have to feel totally comfortable, Ms. Heath. So what is the objective evidence that I have? The objective evidence is that you were taking very serious medication for a substantial period of time before this happened, medication that should not be taken in conjunction with alcohol. You decided, for whatever reason, not to get your husband, which would have been a totally reasonable response, immediately afterwards and say, let's get out of here. We're getting out of here. I'm just talking to you about objective data. Do you understand? The objective data is I have a report here that indicates that you started to take medication, and you've been taking medication for stress for a very long time, and in your own hand or in the hand of another professional, it does say that you did in fact attempt suicide, something that you didn't tell me. I have the defendant, who probably, based upon his own statements and based upon the statements of his witness, wasn't too bright, because if he takes women on his Sea-Doo, what he does is he either holds on to the back of the jacket, puts his hand around his waist, and not be stupid, and grab them onto their waist where you might put your hands in and around their thigh area. That isn't smart. Do you understand? Not smart. That does not necessarily make you a sexual deviant. Okay. He says he did not do this. Your mother says she observed certain bruising on your thighs. The medical records indicate that the doctor who you saw during the month of August noted redness.
But not scratches.
There is no medical evidence of scratches, madam. If you went to the doctor immediately after this incident, which you did not do, and the doctor had looked at you and saw nail scratches, nail marks, something.
Ma'am, when I went to the doctor, he's known me so long, being so strong with my mom, that he didn't even look, he didn't even check. He
Well,
just walked out of the room.
That may be. But this is the objective data that I do not have, which is probably why the police department there chose not to prosecute him.
Ma'am.
There was a prosecutor that wanted to.
The state.
He kept having it postponed, and they put somebody else in there who dropped the case.
It's been postponed and withdrawn for 7 months.
What I'm telling you is, when you have this kind of an assault, especially if you have this kind of an assault, and there was some indication that there was another child, a 13-year-old, who was not a witness here today, so I don't know that, was also inappropriately touched, then the prosecutors proceed. You may be 100% truthful. I, as a judge, have to deal with objective data. And based upon what I have seen, I cannot in good conscience label this man a sexual deviant. I cannot. Only you folks and your consciences know what happened that day. That's all.
Parties are excused. You may step out. On the calendar in the matter of Burke versus Martins. Thank you. Parties have been sworn in, Judge. You may be seated. Folks, have seats, please.
Ms. Burke, according to your complaint, in July of this year,
Yes.
you moved in with the defendant, signing a 6-month lease with her.
Correct.
As a roommate.
Correct.
It was not a match made in heaven.
No.
It is your claim that 3 weeks later she forcibly evicted you from the premises. You are suing her for the expenses that you incurred as a result of that move.
Correct.
Okay. The defendant is counterclaiming, claiming that you breached your lease with her, you had no basis to move, and she claims that you did certain damage to the premises. Is that right?
Correct.
How did you find this roommate situation, Ms. Burke?
I have a copy of her ad in Roommate Finders. It's a roommate service, and I went through that service.
Did you find it online? Is that what you
Yes.
did? Okay. So when did you move in?
On July 25th.
And did you pay August's rent?
Yes, I did.
Which was $800?
Yes, I have a copy of all of my canceled checks.
I don't think that she denies that.
No,
And you
I
paid an additional $400?
Yes, I did.
Is that right?
Yes.
All right, so what caused you to move?
Well, when I moved in, and actually when I came to look at the place, Miss Martinson informed me that she was a massage therapist and that she worked from her home. I wanted to know what kind of massage she performed, and I asked her specifically, is it like sports injury massage? And she said, oh yeah, that's basically what I do. And I said, well, what hours do you perform massage out of the house? And she told me it was strictly during the day. And I was fine with that. She was what I thought was a struggling mother who just had a child, and anyway, I don't want to ramble. Anyway, 2 nights after I moved in, I was walking from my bedroom to the kitchen, and in the living room were 2 naked people. The naked man was lying on his back on the massage table, and the naked woman, not Mrs. Martins, was massaging the naked man in the portion of his body that should be covered by a towel.
Your Honor, this is not true.
Just a minute. Go ahead.
It is true. I informed Miss Martins what I had seen, and she told me that she didn't know what was going on, and that she was very upset with her friend, and that she would take care of it, and that wouldn't happen again.
Someone else worked out of your house as well?
No, I had a girlfriend. She was there. She's here in the building. She would like to testify, just not on camera. She will testify that that is an incorrect statement.
Was she using your house at any time to give massages, whatever kind of massages they were?
She was spending the night, her and her boyfriend. What they were doing that night, I don't know.
She was, according to her, giving him a great massage.
A couple nights later, I walked out, and the same naked woman was there with a different naked man. This time she was crawling on top of the naked man.
In the living room?
Yes. And I informed Mrs. Martinson again. She promised again it wouldn't happen. I just wanted to believe that it wouldn't happen again. But it continued to happen. As a matter of fact, it was 4 o'clock in the afternoon this time, and her friend had come over with this third, different man, and they had gone into the back bedroom. And when I asked Rebecca about it, she stated that she didn't think that there was anything wrong with it, and that I told her that from what I had witnessed, it was basically prostitution in my definition, and that I'd worked far too hard for my goals. I'm also a full-time student, that I wasn't going to let what she was doing
put me at risk because of these strange men coming in the house.
This was after about a week?
That was
Went
about
to
2
this-
weeks.
2 weeks?
2 weeks.
Okay, so you had this confrontation with her after 2 weeks, and
Yes.
whether she was correct as to what she saw, accurate as to what she's
It's not
reporting.
accurate.
Just listen to me. You didn't let me finish.
Sorry.
Whether she is correct or she is incorrect about what she saw, you did have this discussion with her during this first and second week of her tenancy.
It was after the first week.
So whether it's right or it's wrong, this is what she reported to you and complained about. Is that right?
Half of it.
Fine.
Not
Even if it's
entirely.
half. I don't care which half. The bottom half or the top half. It doesn't make any difference. It's half.
Okay.
Okay. So what happened? So now you're in the second week.
Right.
Go ahead.
I had finals coming up in a week, so I knew that I had to concentrate on finals, so I basically needed to deal with this afterwards. Did my studying mostly from my office, sometimes picked up the dogs and took them to the dog park and studied there, anything to keep from going home because of what was going on at the house. I didn't want to go home. After I finished my finals on August 12th, I got home at about 3:30 in the afternoon, and I went back, and my dog was out there with a muzzle on his nose. It was about 100 degrees out in the valley on that day, and he was sick and lethargic. I threw him in the pool and brought him inside to bring his body temperature down, and called the emergency vet.
Because he couldn't pant.
He couldn't pant, he couldn't drink. And I called the emergency vets, and they told me just to monitor him. And he got better, so I didn't end up taking him to the vet. But they did tell me that if he had been there longer, he would have
Don't tell me
died.
what they told you. Muzzle was tight on his face. Couldn't pant, which means you can't get rid of the heat.
Right.
Couldn't drink. Okay. Did you discuss that with her?
Yes, I was actually very upset when it happened, but I realized by the time she got home about 4 hours later, I didn't want any kind of confrontation, so I just calmly said, please don't do this. You know, it put him at danger, and I don't want to, you know, he could have died.
Real cases, real people. Judge Judy. Tara Burke claims former roommate Rebecca Martins forced her to move. Tara says Rebecca is running an illegal massage business.
So what happened next?
I basically stayed in my room that night. The next day I went to work. It wasn't until 2 nights later. Miss Martinson was getting ready for bed, and I informed her that I didn't think the situation was going to work out and gave her my notice.
Okay.
The next night I got home at about 8 o'clock, and Miss Martins was in a rage. And she asked me if I'd found a place yet. And I told her, no, of course I hadn't. We had just spoken about it the night before. And at that point, she started screaming at me and, you know, saying that I used the house as a hotel and I've been gone all day. And I said, I have a job. Of course I've been gone all day. And she said, well, you're off at 3. You know, it's 8 o'clock. Where have you been all this time? And I was actually shocked that she would even be questioning me on that. She's just a roommate. So basically, she started getting more and more aggravated and informed me that if I left for work the next morning, she was going to throw my belongings out on the lawn and change the locks. At which point I told her that she couldn't do that. That wasn't legal. And she started, you know, saying, well, you can sue me, but that won't do you any good. And I said, well, you're out of control. And I reached for the phone to grab 911, and she came after me.
No.
So I ran out the side door of the house, and I ran to the neighbor's house and called 911 and waited at the neighbor's house for the police to show up. The police showed up, and they spoke to each one of us separately. They came out and told me that it was illegal for her to do that, and if she were to try to do that, that I should call them back, and they would come back and arrest her, and that I should try to get out as quickly as possible, and I told them that I would.
So you moved out the next day?
Yes. And the entire time I was moving out, she was behind me screaming and threatening me. And
Okay, so you moved out on the 16th?
Correct.
Okay. Now let's hear your version.
Okay, it's really not quite what she said.
Just tell me your version. I'll decide.
She comes to visit on my ad. I liked her. I let her move in. Everything was okay. She paid me the money. The dogs came after, about 3 days later, and they were a problem from the onset.
But she told you she had dogs before.
Right, but she also told me it was a 7-year-old Rottweiler, and it was a 2-year-old lab that was very well behaved. They were not. The 7-year-old was in heat, and the male was very aggressive. I have pictures of where he bit my dog. He bit my dog 3 times, and that is the reason the muzzle was put on. And she was the one that told me, if they get out of hand, put the muzzle on it, it's in the garage. So that is why I did that after my dog was bitten. And the reason why I had the fight with her at all was because she wasn't looking after her dogs. They had escaped from the yard twice. I have a witness here to testify that they ended up down the block twice. And so she brought me into it saying I had to go look for the dogs.
So let's go back to the 14th of August, a couple of days before she moved out.
Actually, we need to go back up to the first week. After the first week, she got upset because of having a friend over, and she said she saw what she saw. I never saw it, denied it.
That's incorrect.
So that day, she said, I can't handle this. I'm giving you my 2-week notice.
Okay.
So then on the 14th,
Your Honor, that's
she reiterated to me that she was moving out at the same point that we fought over the dogs. I said, your dog's in heat. The male dog is beating up my dog. You need to separate them. And then she did. She put them a few days earlier in the dog run, but then there's no shade there. So I had to keep giving them buckets of water. I had to keep hosing them down. Meanwhile, I have a sick baby in the house.
Okay.
And so it was
So
an
now we're at the
inconvenience to
14th
me.
and 15th. Go ahead.
Right. And so I told her, I said, you're not looking after your animals. I'm not looking after them tomorrow. I said, I am not looking after your pets one more day. This is not a daycare for animals. It's not included with the rent.
Okay.
So she got all mad at me. She grabbed my phone. She ran to her room. Of course, I followed her because she had my phone in her hand. I didn't agree to let her use my phone. And so she goes, I'm calling 911. I'm like, for what? And so she exited out the side door of her room, and she went outside because I unplugged the phone in the living room so she couldn't use the phone.
Why did you do that?
Because she grabbed my phone. She didn't have permission to use it.
Well, you knew she was calling the police.
She said she was. I didn't know what she was
Well,
going to do.
who did she think she was going to call?
I don't know. I wasn't really sure, but I didn't want her using my phone.
Go ahead.
So I unplugged it, and so she couldn't use it. So then I guess she went to the neighbors.
Right.
Police
She called
came.
the police.
Right.
Police told you you couldn't evict her.
And I said, well, she gave her 2-week notice, and it's up tomorrow.
But she's already paid up till the end of the month.
She gave her 2-week notice.
She paid up till the end of the month.
Okay, well, I had someone else that wanted to move in because she had given her notice.
Okay, so she moved out the next day.
She moved her dogs at 9 in the morning, and I thought, great, the dogs are gone. Then she came back a couple hours, and after her and her friend had berated me, and that's why the police were called again that day, and they came to keep the peace. So the police were there the day she moved out with her truck, and upon leaving, she decided to vandalize my car. I have pictures here. She scratched a 3-foot scratch across my brand new car.
Who saw her do that?
The neighbor across the street.
Where's the neighbor?
They didn't want to be on camera.
Everybody doesn't want to be on camera. You must have people who are wanted for something. Let me explain something to you. I take testimony.
Right.
I'll hear a witness.
Yes, there is a witness here.
Who?
Carrie is a neighbor down the block that testified to her dogs being out.
I'm not interested in the dogs being out. I'm interested in vandalizing your car.
Oh, this is the picture.
I'm not interested in the picture. I'm interested in somebody who saw her vandalize your car.
Well, I didn't see her actually do it.
Fine.
But
Let's
she
move
was
on.
standing next to the car.
Let's move on. I'm going to deal with your counterclaim first.
Right.
Damage to the car I've dealt with. I don't have anybody who saw her do it. What about a fence?
Yes. The fence was destroyed by her dogs.
Let me see. Did your dogs do this?
I have no idea. This is the first I've heard of it. She has a dog as well, so I don't know whether mine did
How did
or-
they do this to the fence?
The Rottweiler dug under the fence, and the lab started chewing on the fence and ripped it off. I made a police report the day that the police came to keep the peace, and they saw it, and they made a note of it in the
Your
report.
Honor, I'm the one who called the police.
Just a second.
No, you didn't.
Just a second. You have a police report?
I
About this fence?
called the police
Do you
that
have a police
day.
report about the fence?
They didn't say it in there, but they want to know about the car incident as well.
I don't know about the car. I'm talking about the fence.
It doesn't say anything about the fence, but it shows
Fine.
an investigation.
Fine. I want to know about the fence.
Right.
You said
this is the whole incident.
Is there anything in there about the fence? The answer
It
is
doesn't
yes
say the
or
word
no.
fence.
Now, reimbursements of cleaning costs. What are the cleaning costs?
Yes, $70 per hour, 2-hour minimum.
For what?
For cleaning up the state of the room that she left it. I have pictures of the way she left the room.
Can I see it, please?
You have to look closely on the floor. There's about an inch thick of dog hair.
This is the room the way she left it?
On the floor, yeah.
It's pretty clean to me. Next.
There's dog hair on. No, look on the floor.
I'm looking at the floor.
Okay, and the
Looks pretty clean to you?
Looks clean to me.
Next. What else?
Okay.
Defamation of character and miscellaneous expenses.
Right, the biting of my dog.
Forget it.
Was a show dog.
Okay, good.
Okay. The dog.
Ms. Martins, I'm not going to torture you anymore. Let me give it to you as I see it, madam.
Okay.
The plaintiff wanted a roommate.
Yes.
She wanted to live with someone. She answered your ad.
Yes.
In good faith, she came. You asked her for $400 security.
Yes.
She gave you $400 security.
Yes.
She agreed to move in. She moved in on or about the 25th of July. She paid you the entire amount of rent.
Yes.
So that she was all paid up through the end of August. She was so uncomfortable with the situation there that she saw, so uncomfortable that according to you, she was so upset that your friend was doing business out of your house that after 1 week, she said, I can't stay here anymore. You know, this is not good for me. You know, I'm not going to jeopardize my life by staying here. We'll have a police raid here, and I'm going to get caught in the middle of this thing. So, according to you, after 1 week, she said, I'm moving.
Right.
Now, she's all paid up till the end of August. You can't throw her out.
I didn't throw her. I just wanted her dogs to behave.
And how did you expect to do that?
She bought a barking collars for them, but she didn't put the batteries in. She refused to put batteries in.
So my question to you is, you were both unhappy with this arrangement.
Yes.
Clearly. She was unhappy with the kind of business being conducted out of your home, and you were unhappy with her barking dogs. So clearly this was a situation that should just go away by her moving out. Right?
Yes.
Perfect. What monies do you think you are owed? Listen to me carefully, because her counterclaim is gone. I'm dismissing it. She has no counterclaim.
Right. But what about her scratching my car? I mean, that's a $400 damage.
I don't believe she did it.
I didn't.
Since I don't believe very much else of what you tell me, Miss Martins, I don't believe that she scratched your car.
She scratched my car.
Okay, good. Where did you go after you left her house?
A good friend of mine, when he actually heard what was happening in the house, had been telling me, get out, I have a three-bedroom house, you can stay with me. I felt my duty as a tenant was to give notice, so I didn't, okay.
Just answer my question.
My friend's house.
Are you still there?
No, I found a place.
You found a place in a roommate situation?
Very nice roommate, though.
Okay.
And she has a normal job.
Your Honor, was not working out of my house. She was there with a boyfriend. I mean, you're claiming that she was working out of my house. She's not
Listen.
at work. She's a flight attendant.
Let me tell you this. Whatever she was doing in your house when you weren't there,
I was
according to you, listen to me. You're not getting it. Are you thick? I tried to explain it. I will do it one more time. She came, she gave you money. According to you, she gave you notice within 1 week that because of the things that she was observing in your house and she was so distressed, she was giving you notice. That's according to you.
Well, she could see
Now, just
through
a second.
walls?
Just a second. What I'm telling you is, based upon what you told me, after 1 week of living in your house.
She was complaining, yes. No, she was very attractive and very thin, and she was calling her a crack because of her thinness and her wanting to swim in my pool naked.
Miss Martins, there is no question in my mind that...
Parties have been sworn in, Judge. You may be seated. Folks, have seats, please.
Mr. Hoffman, the defendant is your mother.
Yes, ma'am.
And I've tried to understand your complaint as well as your mother's countersuit. You claim that you sold to your mother certain restaurant equipment, a freezer and some other equipment, and that she owes you money on that equipment.
Yes, ma'am.
Your mother says she's not only paid for that equipment, the freezer doesn't work, and not only doesn't she owe you any money, but you actually owe her money.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. What was this equipment? Where did it come from? Why would you sell it?
Actually, I owned a restaurant in Salisbury, Maryland. Was getting out of the restaurant business. I had been working 16, 18 hours a day. It was just too much. I was losing my marriage, my 2 small children. Had called a restaurant equipment place, set up arrangements for them to come and buy all the equipment from me. My mother steps in and says, let me buy the equipment from you. I may want to give it a go. I mean, you've worked so hard putting this business together from the ground up. We'd hate to see, you know, the family lose this.
What kind of a restaurant was it?
It was a carry-out sub pizza and deli type restaurant.
Okay. Were you making any money?
A little bit of money, not a lot. It wasn't worth all the time we had to put in. Put out a lot of bills, put out over $30,000 for the equipment.
Okay. Did she give you any money?
She gave me $4,000, signed a bill of sale for a list of equipment, which I have here.
I'd like to see it, please.
That's a copy of the bill of sale.
So she purchased, according to you, all of this equipment for $8,000. According to this, she gave you a deposit of $5,000.
That was correct. I only actually received $4,000 cash, Your Honor. $1,000 I gave to her to help her with startup costs.
This contract of sale says $5,000.
Yes, ma'am.
With a balance due and owing of $3,000.
Yes, ma'am.
That's what it says. And then it says that you additionally sold her a freezer for $3,000. Did she pay you anything towards the freezer?
No, ma'am.
Okay, Mrs. Hoffman, let me hear from you.
Hey, Your Honor. This started out, Joe told part of the truth. This started out, my son had 3 businesses in Salisbury, Maryland. He was losing his family and his businesses because of a crack cocaine addiction. I stepped in, being his mother, trying to help him save at least this one business. He reneged on his lease, was locked out of the building. He could not get to his equipment. I paid the money for Joe to get into the building, the $1,000. That's the $1,000 that Joe was talking about. I didn't want this business. I quit my day job 2 years ago to enjoy my farm and my horses, Your Honor. I was trying to help my son. I wanted my son to seek counseling for his drug addiction. He's lost everything.
All right, so you agreed to go into his business to save the business.
Yes, ma'am. Hopefully that he would get it back.
Okay. Did you sign a contract with him with regard to the equipment?
I signed this. Joe told me the same thing that he gave you. I have the notarized copy and the serial numbers.
Okay.
Joe told me it was a thriving business, and I agreed to the $1,000 a month because I thought, he showed me his books, he was making $90,000 in 6 months' time, that I would be able to pay back this at $1,000 increments. I have registered tapes to prove documentation that I only make, some days, only $50 a day.
Mrs. Hoffman, that's not his problem. That's something, if you're going into a business, you're supposed to check the books very carefully.
I trusted my son, Your Honor.
Well, that's a problem. How can you trust your son if you say he's got a serious drug problem?
I know.
And clearly you were dealing at arm's length with him with regard to this transaction because you drew up a contract, you drew up serial numbers for all the items. This was not a, I'm going to help you out, I trust you. This is business here. Let me see your books. He showed you his books.
Showed me his book.
Showed you his book. And according to his book, he made a lot more than certainly you were making.
Yes, ma'am.
Did you have an accountant go over the books?
No, ma'am.
Did you have somebody come and sit in the restaurant every day for about a week to see what kind of traffic there was?
No, ma'am, I didn't.
Well, that's what you do if you buy a
foolish.
restaurant. That's what you do if you buy a restaurant. How much money do you still owe him on the equipment?
The freezer wasn't due a payment until March.
Of 2002?
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, so you don't owe him anything really on the freezer because the payments aren't due yet. Is that right, sir?
That's not correct, ma'am. She defaulted on the rest of the loan. I was due a payment December 30th, as per the signed notarized agreement of $1,000. The freezer was lent to my mother.
No, sir. This says she was to pay you in increments of $1,000 until paid. That's for the freezer. Starting March 30th, 2002, until May 30th, 2002, a total of 3 payments. So
Yes,
she
Your
doesn't
Honor.
owe you any money yet on the freezer.
And it was verbally between myself and my mother that I would allow her to pay the freezer after she paid me for the rest of the agreement.
It doesn't say that here, sir.
That was verbal when she drew the contract up.
Let me
Your Honor.
explain something to you, sir. When you have a contract, anything outside the contract that's verbal, courts don't consider. Courts say, forget it, so strike the freezer. She's got a little bit of time before she has to pay that first $1,000 payment. Now, what else do you owe him?
The refrigerator is leased. The leasing company has contacted me. Joe owes money on that. And I found out yesterday morning that they're coming to pick up the refrigerator unless I can pay him for it. And the signs on the building, I've had to pick up that bill because Joe told me that the signs were paid for, and I've had to pay that. And I feel I don't owe him any money because everything I've had to pay out, that was his bills.
Real cases, real people. Judge Judy. Joseph Hoffman says his mother, Doris Hoffman, owes for the cost of restaurant equipment. Doris says Joseph is a crack addict, and buying the equipment was an attempt to save his business.
Go ahead.
My mother knew that there was 2 leased items. One was a refrigerator, one was an ice machine. She knew exactly how much the leases were. We sat down at the kitchen table and figured out how much the bills would be for the leases. She knew there was $300 owed on one side, $300 owed on the other side.
How long had you had this business, sir?
I had the business for just about a year, Your Honor.
Okay. Tell me something about your counterclaim, Mrs. Hoffman.
Your Honor, I don't feel I owe Joe the money. I feel...
Owing, I'll take care of in a minute. You have a counterclaim for $4,900.
Yes, ma'am.
For what?
It's for bills and that I've had to pick up and pay his because they were going to take the signs off the building. A microwave that he had a piece of aluminum foil in for the fuse to keep the microwave running. It's for 2 car top signs that he sold me. And yes, Your Honor, I did know he owed $350 on one, but I did not know about the 2 exterior signs that the man was there to take down off the building the day I opened my door.
That you should have known. Mrs. Hoffman, it's always a problem when you're in business with family.
Make sure you get everything in writing.
No, you're supposed to know. If you're going into a business venture, you're supposed to exercise due diligence. If you looked into all of his books, you would have had to have seen payments that he was making to a sign company, right? You would have had to have seen payments that he's making for equipment. And then you say, what is this for? All right, let me see the contract. How much was it originally? How much is owing on it? And then you make a judgment. And you can't say, well, I trusted him, he's my son. This is a business venture. Your mother doesn't owe you for the freezer yet. Now, with regard to the other payments, those were supposed to be completed for the remainder of the equipment by next month.
Yes, ma'am. She's on a payment plan. She's already missed December's payment, and January's payment is coming up.
Well, it says for 3 months starting in December. Did she pay you December's payment?
No, ma'am.
And that was for $1,000.
Yes, ma'am.
And then January's payment, she didn't pay you.
No, ma'am.
But that's not due yet.
That's correct.
Is that right?
That's correct.
So far, she only owes you $1,000.
That's correct.
Judgment for the plaintiff in the amount of $1,000. That's all.
Parties are excused. You may step out.
It hurt very much to have to bring my own mother to court, and I hope that she can finish paying me the money she owes me so we can get our families back together.
A lot of things didn't come out that should have came out, and my son does have a drug addiction problem.
And now the next case.
All parties on Shaw versus Jones. Step forward, please.
50-year-old Bonnie Shaw is suing her former friend, 42-year-old bartender Sherry Jones, for the value of items she sold at a garage sale. Bonnie says Sherry pocketed the money.
Miss Shaw, you and the defendant were friends, is that right?
Yes.
And according to your complaint, you gave her some things to sell at a garage sale.
Yeah.
These were things that you originally had at a garage sale that you had at your house.
Correct.
That you were unable to sell.
Correct.
It is your claim that she either kept the stuff or sold it and kept the money, and you want the value of the property that you gave to her to sell.
It was garage sale items and other items that she had borrowed, and I brought her son with me, her abandoned son, who can testify that to the quantity of items.
When did you have your garage sale?
In September and the beginning of October.
Over how many days?
5, 6.
And where did you get this stuff from?
It was 5 generations worth of items, plus relatives and neighbors gave me things. It was massive amounts, Your Honor. Furniture, some antiques, bedding books, clothing for every age, sexes, sizes, dishes, household items, thousands of items.
Explain to me how the property came to be in Miss Jones's possession.
When the sale was over, she told me to rent a U-Haul. She would bring it to her house. She had a great location. She said that she could sell sand to the Arabs and snow to the Eskimos, and that she's had several yards.
that way. Shh. Don't speak. You'll have a chance. Go ahead.
So I, upon her insistence, rented a U-Haul truck and drove it to her house. Her son was there, helped unload it. She ran the sale at her place. When I asked about money, it was one excuse after another. At that time, I did not realize that she was planning on disappearing from town again. A few things were returned.
What did she return?
A few books. I had well over 1,000 books. She returned some. Your Honor, this is a little more complicated than just yard sale stuff. I mean, this lady has the habit of ripping everybody off. She disappears. She leaves town. She abandons her child.
Miss Shaw, that may be interesting. This is a court.
Understood.
You have to prove a case. Did you make an itemized list of everything that you gave to her in the U-Haul?
I have a generalized list. It would be
I'm not
impossible to
interested.
itemize all the thousands of items, Your Honor.
Well, then how in the world am I going to make a decision? Generalized list is no good. You check off from the list. I mean, that's business. I assume you were in this to make money, right? And to unload a lot of junk from your house.
It wasn't junk, Your Honor.
Well, there's
Yes.
a lot of stuff in there that, madam, listen to me. I know why people have garage sales. I've had those. Put a lot of stuff out, and you hope that somebody wants to buy you a 15-year-old sled or children's ice skates or some picture that you can't look at in your house that's, you know, that's there. Sometimes an old frame that has a broken glass. I know what goes out in garage sales. This is not an estate sale, but you have to have a list. Here, you say you want the return of value of personal property, and you say it's worth $1,625. Well, that's a very specific amount. And how do you come up with that specific amount if you have no specific list?
The letter I wrote to her has specific items in it.
Well, let's see. Let me take a look at the specific items.
That's the letter she totally ignored. I advised her that I would take her to small claims court unless she returned the items or the value thereof.
Mostly you talk about in this letter about things she borrowed from you, not about the things that she allegedly took for the garage sale. You sold well over $582 worth of goods, yet I was only reimbursed $82. Then you go on to talk about a shelving unit that you loaned to her, a blue shelving unit. When did you loan her a blue shelving unit?
Before the sale. She wanted to have it to set things up on it. And it was reiterated repeatedly that that was not for sale. I wanted it back.
So where is that?
Your Honor, I have no idea. I left some things in the garage when I left. There was like a shelving, there was an old broken door, a broken window. Furthermore, when she says thousands of items, there was a lot of them she left at her house that didn't even bring over to my house. When the stuff was returned, half the time she was sleeping.
How many times did you return some things to the house?
I made at least 12 carloads from my Monte Carlo.
Her son will attest to what was there. He knows that she was bragging one day of over $600 that she brought in from the sale. I did not receive this
That's
money.
A lie.
You want to step
That's
up?
a lie.
Just a minute.
I never took his $600 for no.
I'm talking
Just a
about my
minute.
600.
Shh. You're her son? Who do you live with?
I live with my stepfather and this lady here.
Had you been living with your mother?
I was until she decided to leave.
And then you moved in with the plaintiff.
Me and my stepfather moved in
So when she left, her husband moved in with the plaintiff.
after she left.
Shh, I don't want to hear from you.
He couldn't afford it anymore with just the two of us there, so she offered to help us out, and we've been living there.
Is your stepfather renting a room from her, or did they live together?
No, we rent upstairs there.
So the two of you sleep upstairs?
Yep.
Now, what do you know about this property?
I remember books and some clothes and stuff like that.
How many boxes of books do you remember?
No, not off the top of my head.
All right, let's get back to the things that you say she borrowed. A fancy lace black slip top.
The borrowing that top was for an anniversary party, and the dress that's mentioned is also in this photo.
Did you borrow dresses from her?
No, I didn't, Your Honor. It's a black dress. She had in her garage sale before her belongings left the garage sale. My daughter gave her $1.50, and she accepted it. As far as the black cami lacy thing, yes, I have that. I was told not to go near her house. I was told not to call there. How do I give it to her?
Borrowed slippers. What are the borrowed slippers?
Your Honor, I know this all sounds really trivial. And
It does sound trivial, madam.
I mentioned that in the letter to her, but what you have to understand is that I am not used to being ripped off like this, especially by a friend. This was all a con on her part to line her pockets. She'd been planning on leaving town for months, and nobody
Madam,
even knew about it.
You say it sounds petty. It certainly does. My white hamper that belonged to my grandmother.
Yes.
Well, when did she borrow your white hamper?
In September, October.
What'd she borrow your white hamper for?
So one of the kids could have a place to throw their clothes.
One of her children?
Yes.
Then that's not borrowed.
It was on loan. She was going to
please.
get something else.
Oh, please. Come on. Come on. We're talking about nonsense here. Borrowed purple sheets. What would she borrow purple sheets for?
For her bedroom, she wanted to change the look.
And you're saying that they're borrowed?
Yes, ma'am. It was the whole set.
Just a second. I never had a friend that I said, you could use my sheets, borrow them, and then you can then give them back to me when you're finished. Miss Shaw, you're angry about something.
I am not angry, Your Honor.
And it may be that she ripped you off. That's very possible. But if you're in business, then what you do is you inventory. She gave you, you say $82. Well, according to this young man, according to your witness, the only thing that he recalls emptying out of the U-Haul were boxes of books and old clothes. And it's very possible that you gave her more stuff. But without a proper inventory, I cannot help you. No, that is not an inventory.
There was a stove. There was...
He doesn't remember unloading a stove.
He's probably as nervous as I am.
Well, you don't look nervous at all. And he's not nervous at all. If he had to take a stove out of a U-Haul, that would be something that you would remember, which he didn't tell me. Miss Shaw, whatever problems you have with this lady, I would suggest we get over them. And it's very possible she sold stuff at her garage sale that she had and didn't give you the money. The court can't help you unless you keep records.
I understand that. There was
Good.
just way too many items to mention, and her
Then
own son can attest to the money that she bragged about getting.
If you can't itemize what they are because there are way too many items, I can't help you. Period. Goodbye.
The parties are excused. You may step out.
Oh, excuse me, one second.
Trên tay mình đang cầm đấy là dòng sản phẩm Avisua Mama dành cho các bạn đang có ý định mang bầu hoặc là đã có bầu. Thì đối với dòng Avisua Mama này thì có cái công dụng sẽ bổ sung các cái DHA, các cái vitamin và các cái khoáng chất cần thiết cho cơ thể, hỗ trợ tăng cường sức khỏe và nâng cao sức đề kháng cho phụ nữ trước khi mang thai, trong thời kỳ mang thai và khi mà chúng ta cho con bú. Và những đối tượng nên sử dụng cái dòng Avisua Mama này thì đó là những người phụ nữ có thai, phụ nữ đang cho con bú, ăn uống kém hoặc là có cái chế độ ăn bị thiếu hụt các cái chất dinh dưỡng. Những phụ nữ mang thai có nhu cầu cần tăng cường sức khỏe thì chúng ta nên sử dụng cái dòng Avisua Mama này. Và những cái thành phần có trong Avisua Mama này thì gồm có sắt, canxi, kẽm sulfate, magie, vitamin C, vitamin B3, vitamin E, vitamin B5, vitamin B1, vitamin B2, vitamin B6, vitamin B12, vitamin D3. Đó là những cái thành phần cực kỳ là quan trọng và rất là tốt cho cơ thể, đặc biệt là những người mang thai, những người cho con bú và những người có cái ý định mang thai. Và cách dùng thì chúng ta sẽ dùng 2 viên trên một lần, gồm 1 viên Avisua Mama Multi và 1 viên Avisua Mama hạt quy. Chúng ta uống trong hoặc là sau khi ăn, nuốt nguyên vẹn cùng với nước. Đó là cái cách sử dụng Avisua Mama này. Thì những ai mà đang có ý định muốn mang thai hoặc là những người đang mang thai cho con bú thì chúng ta nên tìm hiểu và sử dụng cái dòng Avisua Mama này, vì những cái dưỡng chất cực kỳ là cần thiết cho cơ thể của chúng ta.